What if the doctor who saved your life was the same man slowly killing you? For 21 years, biotech CEO Evelyn Mercer believed a devastating crash destroyed her spine forever. Trapped in a wheelchair, dependent on a single physician's care, she built an empire from her prison. Then a broke single father with an engineering degree noticed something the world's best doctors missed. Her body was never broken. It was being poisoned. This is their story. Like this video, comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far this story travels, and follow along until the very end. The mansion on Russian Hill cost $42 million, though Evelyn Mercer rarely bothered remembering that number anymore. Money stopped meaning much after the first $100 million. What mattered was control, over boardrooms, over bleeding-edge patents, over the pharmaceutical landscape of the entire West Coast. And for 20 years and 7 months, she'd maintained that control from behind a desk mounted to the armrest of her wheelchair, a custom-built titanium prison that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The chair didn't make her weak. If anything, it sharpened her. The Leiden trial results are unacceptable, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the conference room like surgical steel. On the monitor, 3 executives in an Amsterdam office flinched visibly. You promised me Phase 3 approval by October. It's November, and your team hasn't even resolved the adverse reaction protocols. Ms. Mercer, the regulatory standards in the EU are obstacles you were hired to overcome. She tapped a single manicured finger against the desk. The sound echoed. I don't pay you to explain problems. I pay you to eliminate them. One of the executives, the younger one, probably fresh out of business school, opened his mouth to argue. Evelyn cut him off with a look that could freeze nitrogen. You have until December 1st to show me actionable progress, or I'm reallocating your entire budget to the Singapore division. Are we clear? The call ended 2 minutes later with revised deadlines and at least one executive sweating through his shirt. Evelyn rolled backward from the desk, hands moving expertly across the wheelchair's controls. The motors hummed, smooth and responsive. German engineering, 6-figure prototype. It responded to the slightest pressure. She hated it more than anything in the world. Her assistant, Marcus, appeared in the doorway holding a tablet. Young, efficient, terrified of her. Exactly the way she preferred. Dr. Vale's office confirmed your 3 o'clock neurotherapy session, and the medical courier service called. They're running behind on this afternoon's delivery. How far behind? 20 minutes, maybe 30. Traffic on the bridge. Evelyn's jaw tightened. The neurotherapy compounds were time-sensitive, biological window of less than 4 hours from temperature-controlled storage to injection. Delays weren't just inconvenient, they were expensive. Tell them if the delivery arrives compromised, I'm switching vendors, permanently. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Evelyn turned her chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. San Francisco spread below her like a kingdom she ruled but could never walk through. 21 years since the crash. She'd been 26, freshly graduated from Stanford Medical School, ready to revolutionize regenerative biotech. Then a drunk driver crossed the center line on Highway 1, and Evelyn Mercer's spine shattered in 3 places. At least, that's what Dr. Adrian Vale told her when she woke up 3 weeks later, paralyzed from the chest down. She didn't remember much about the crash itself. Just headlights, screaming metal, the smell of gasoline and burnt rubber. Waking up in a bed at San Francisco General with Adrian standing over her, his face grave and gentle. Distinguished silver hair even back then. Wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more like a professor than a surgeon. The damage was catastrophic, he'd said, his voice soft with what seemed like genuine compassion. 3 vertebrae fractured, spinal cord compression at C6. Most physicians would have written you off, Evelyn, but I won't give up on you. And he hadn't. For 2 decades, Dr. Adrian Vale had been the singular constant in Evelyn's life. Her physician, her researcher, her closest advisor. The man who designed her spinal brace, who synthesized her custom neurotherapy treatments, who kept her alive when every other specialist said her condition was hopeless. When her parents died in a plane crash 7 years ago, Adrian had been at the funeral, steady and supportive. When Mercer Biomedical nearly collapsed during the 2020 market crisis, Adrian had restructured the entire research division and saved the company. She owed him everything. The intercom buzzed. Miss Mercer, the courier's here. Send him up. Evelyn rolled toward her private office on the mansion's 2nd floor, where temperature-controlled medical cabinets lined one wall beside thousands of dollars worth of rehabilitation equipment she hadn't touched in years. The equipment was mostly for show now, something to point at during investor meetings, proof that Evelyn Mercer never stopped fighting. Fighting what exactly, she sometimes wondered late at night when the phantom pains kept her awake. The door opened. Marcus stepped in first, followed by someone Evelyn had never seen before. Not the usual courier. This one was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair going gray at the temples, and the kind of hollow-eyed exhaustion that came from too many bills and not enough sleep. He wore the company uniform, blue jacket, ID badge clipped to his chest, but it fit him wrong, like he'd borrowed it from someone smaller. His shoulders were too broad for the jacket. The sleeves rode up slightly when he moved. He carried the insulated medical case carefully, both hands gripping the handles. But there was something in the way he held it. Not reverent, just cautious. Ms. Mercer. His voice was rough, strained, like he'd been shouting, or crying, or both. Delivery from Biologistics. You're new. Started last week. He set the case on the counter, hands moving with surprising precision as he unlocked the biometric seal. Strong hands, she noticed, scarred knuckles, working hands. Daniel Cross. Evelyn watched him work. His movements were efficient but not quite practiced. He checked the seal twice, like he was still learning the protocol. His hands weren't steady. There was a tremor in his fingers, subtle but noticeable. Stress, probably. Or caffeine. She'd seen it 1,000 times in overworked residents during her brief medical career. Where's Raphael? He usually handles my route. Raphael quit. Daniel pulled the thermal container from the case, checking the digital temperature display. They didn't mention why. I got his assignments. And nobody thought to inform me I'd be trusting my treatments to someone who started last week? Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. He didn't look at her. Just kept working, fingers moving across the container's touchscreen, verifying temperatures and transit codes. The compounds are stable, temperature maintained at 2 degrees Celsius for the entire transit, well within your physician's specifications. That's not what I asked. No, ma'am. Now he did look at her, and something in his eyes wasn't quite fear. Wasn't quite respect either. Something harder. Older. But it's the answer that matters. Evelyn felt something shift in the room. Most people couldn't hold her gaze for more than a few seconds. Executives, employees, even Adrian sometimes looked away when she fixed them with her full attention. But this courier, this nobody who delivered medical supplies for barely above minimum wage, looked at her like she was just another client. Just another stop on a route he didn't want to be running. She almost respected it. Put the container in cabinet 3, she said, gesturing toward the medical storage units. And don't touch anything else. Daniel moved toward the cabinets. His boots were old, she noticed. Worn leather with scuff marks that suggested years of heavy use. Not the kind of footwear most couriers wore. Too sturdy. Too expensive, once upon a time. That's when it happened. His boot caught the edge of the equipment mat, the rubberized surface that protected the hardwood floors from the metal therapy equipment. Not hard. Just a stumble, a half-second loss of balance when his heel didn't land where he expected. His shoulder hit the cabinet door, and the thermal container slipped from his grip. Not far. Maybe 6 inches. But 6 inches was enough. The thermal container hit the cabinet's steel shelf with a crack that sounded catastrophically loud in the quiet room. Daniel caught it before it could fall further, his reflexes faster than Evelyn expected, but the damage was visible immediately. A hairline fracture across the temperature display, the digital readout flickering between numbers, 2.1 degrees Celsius, 2.3 degrees Celsius, error, 2.0 degrees Celsius. Jesus! Daniel steadied the container with both hands, his face going pale. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't... Get out! Miss Mercer, I can file an emergency replacement request. Get out! Evelyn's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous, the tone she used in boardrooms when someone needed to be reminded exactly who they were talking to. Daniel's face went from pale to ashen. He carefully, so carefully, set the container down on the shelf, his hand shaking now for a completely different reason. I'll file an incident report, he said quietly, backing away from the cabinet. The company insurance will cover replacement costs. This won't affect your treatment schedule. Do you have any idea what you just damaged? Evelyn rolled closer, and Daniel actually stepped back. Good. He should be afraid. Those compounds cost $47,000 per dose. The biological stability window just collapsed from 4 hours to maybe 90 minutes. I have a neurotherapy session in 2 hours that you just made impossible. I'll take full responsibility. You'll be bankrupt in a week. Evelyn gestured toward the door, her hand cutting through the air like a blade. You can't afford to replace this. Nobody at your pay grade can. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to tell your supervisor what happened. And then you're going to find a different job because you'll never work another medical courier route in this city again. I'll make certain of that. Something flickered across Daniel's face. Not fear now. Something harder, angrier. You're right, he said, his voice tight. I can't afford to replace it. Then we're done here. But maybe you should ask your doctor why he's prescribing compounds that cost more than a new car. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the damaged container, then back to her, especially when half the active ingredients are just synthetic glucocorticoids and nerve blockers you could get from any hospital pharmacy for a few $100. Evelyn froze. Daniel kept talking, and now there was an edge in his voice that hadn't been there before. Not anger exactly, something closer to frustration, to exhaustion with a system that didn't make sense. I used to be an aerospace engineer before I started driving deliveries. Stress analysis, materials science, biomechanics. That was my field for 15 years. I've reviewed enough medical equipment specifications to know when something doesn't add up. He nodded toward the massive spinal brace mounted on the wall, the prototype backup unit for the one currently locked around Evelyn's torso beneath her clothes. Titanium and carbon fiber, sleek and sophisticated, with embedded sensors and articulated support struts that followed the curve of her spine. That brace you're wearing? Daniel said. The compression geometry is wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. The cervical mounting points are applying constant pressure to your C5 and C6 vertebrae. I can see the load distribution just from the external support structure. That's not spinal support. That's mechanical compression, sustained force in exactly the wrong direction. His voice gained intensity, like he was lecturing a junior engineer who'd made a critical design error. And those therapy compounds, they're not helping you heal, they're keeping you dependent. The room went absolutely silent. Outside, a cable car bell rang somewhere down the hill. Traffic sounds drifted up from the street. Normal city noises from a normal afternoon. But inside Evelyn's office, the air felt thick and dangerous. Evelyn stared at him. The stranger. This broke courier with trembling hands in a uniform that didn't fit. This man who'd just destroyed $47,000 of medicine and had the audacity, the absolute insanity, to stand in her home and tell her the treatment keeping her alive was a lie. Get out of my house. Ms. Mercer, I know how this sounds. Now. The word came out like a gunshot. Daniel grabbed his empty case and left. Marcus appeared seconds later, probably drawn by the shouting, his face carefully neutral. Ma'am, is everything... Call Dr. Vale. Evelyn's voice was shaking. She gripped the wheelchair's armrest to steady herself. Tell him the delivery is compromised and I need an emergency replacement within the hour. Then call Biologistics and inform them that courier is fired, effective immediately. I want him blacklisted from every medical route in the Bay Area. Yes, ma'am. Marcus hesitated. Should I contact building security to ensure he leaves the property? He's already gone. Just make the calls. Marcus left. Evelyn rolled toward the windows, her hands trembling with fury. The absolute nerve, the breathtaking arrogance. Who did he think he was? Some failed engineer turned delivery driver throwing around technical terms he probably half understood, accusing world-class physicians of malpractice because he knocked over a container and needed to deflect blame. The compression geometry is wrong. She shut the thought down immediately, turned her chair back toward the medical cabinet. The damaged container sat on the shelf, temperature readout still flickering. Error. 2.4 degrees Celsius. Error. Daniel Cross was a fool, a desperate man looking for excuses, but his hands had been steady when he caught the container, and his eyes had been certain when he talked about the brace. Evelyn closed her eyes, took a breath, forced herself to think clearly. 21 years of treatment. 21 years of trusting Adrian Vale with her life. 21 years of neurotherapy sessions and custom medications, and a spinal brace that cost $250,000 to develop. It was impossible. What Daniel suggested was impossible. Wasn't it? Keats. Adrian arrived 40 minutes later with the emergency replacement, looking concerned and professional in his tailored gray suit. 61 years old now, but he carried himself like a man a decade younger. The silver hair had gone completely white, but it only made him look more distinguished. Evelyn. He set his medical bag on the counter, already pulling out supplies for the injection. Marcus told me what happened. Are you experiencing any withdrawal symptoms? No, I'm fine. Delayed neurotherapy can trigger muscle spasms and autonomic dysregulation. If you feel any... I said I'm fine, Adrian. He looked at her, his expression softening. You're angry. I understand. Courier negligence is unacceptable, especially with your treatment protocol. It's handled. Good. Adrian prepared the injection with practiced efficiency, checking the replacement compounds, verifying the dosage, loading the specialized syringe designed specifically for Evelyn's therapy regimen. I've already contacted biologistics management. They're implementing additional training protocols to prevent future incidents. Evelyn watched him work. These were hands she'd trusted for 2 decades. Hands that had rebuilt her life after the crash. Hands that administered treatments 3 times a week, every week, year after year. They're not helping you heal. They're keeping you dependent. Adrian, she said carefully, when was the last time we reviewed my treatment protocol? He glanced up, still preparing the injection. We adjust dosages quarterly based on your biomarkers. Why? I mean, fundamentally reviewed it. The core compounds, the delivery mechanism. The protocol is optimized for your specific neurological profile. He held the syringe up to the light, checking for air bubbles. Why are you asking? The courier said something before he left. Adrian's hand stilled, just for a second. Then he continued working. Oh? He claimed the medications were overpriced, that the active ingredients were basic pharmaceuticals marked up thousands of %. The courier was an expert in biochemistry, was he? Adrian's voice carried gentle amusement. Evelyn, these are custom synthesized compounds. The molecular structures are proprietary. Of course, they're expensive. He also said the brace compression geometry was wrong. Now Adrian did stop. He set the syringe down carefully and turned to face her fully. What exactly did this courier say to you? That the cervical mounting points apply too much pressure, that it's compressing my spine instead of supporting it. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a patient teacher dealing with a difficult student. Evelyn, you're one of the most brilliant people I know, but you're not an engineer. Neither was this courier, I'm guessing, despite whatever credentials he claimed. He said he worked in aerospace, stress analysis, and now he delivers packages. Adrian walked over to the mounted backup brace, running his hand along the titanium framework. This device was designed by the best biomedical engineers in the world, MIT, Stanford, Johns Hopkins. The compression forces are precisely calibrated to stabilize your injury while allowing maximum possible mobility. Without this brace, your spine would collapse. You know this. I know what you've told me. The words came out sharper than Evelyn intended. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Concern, maybe, or something else. You're scared, he said gently. That's understandable. This courier introduced doubt, and doubt is terrifying when you're dependent on medical treatment for survival. I'm not scared. I'm asking questions. Questions based on the uninformed opinion of a stranger who damaged your medication and needed to deflect blame. Adrian picked up the syringe again. Evelyn, I have dedicated 21 years to your care. Everything I've done has been to keep you alive and functional, to give you the best possible life despite catastrophic injury. Do you really think I would harm you? And there it was, the question that made everything else seem paranoid and ungrateful. Adrian had saved her life. He'd been there through every setback, every complication, every dark moment when Evelyn wanted to give up. He'd never asked for anything except the opportunity to help her. No, she said quietly. Of course not. Good. Adrian smiled, warm and reassuring. Now let's get you treated before you start experiencing actual withdrawal. Roll up your sleeve. Evelyn did. The injection hurt like it always did, a deep burning pressure that spread from the injection site through her shoulder and down her arm. Adrian administered it with practiced efficiency, then applied a sterile bandage. There. You should feel the effects within 20 minutes. He packed up his medical bag. I want you to monitor for any unusual symptoms. The delayed administration might cause some fluctuation in your baseline. I will. And Evelyn? He paused at the door. Try not to let random strangers upset you. You're doing remarkably well, all things considered. Don't let doubt undermine your progress. He left. Evelyn sat alone in her office as the medication began to work its way through her system. The familiar sensation started almost immediately, a tingling numbness spreading through her torso, a heaviness settling into her limbs, the feeling of her body shutting down, going quiet. She'd always thought of it as relief, the pain and phantom sensations fading away. But now, for the first time, she wondered if it was something else, something worse. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She told herself it was just the delayed treatment schedule throwing off her routine. But at 2 in the morning, she found herself in front of her computer, pulling up files she hadn't looked at in years. Medical records from the accident, engineering specifications for the spinal brace, treatment protocols and compound analyses and biomarker reports spanning 2 decades. At first, she didn't know what she was looking for, just reviewing, just being thorough, proving that courier wrong so she could stop thinking about his words. But the more she read, the less certain she became. The initial MRI from the night of the crash showed significant damage, yes, but the radiologist's notes mentioned incomplete cord injury and potential for partial neurological recovery with aggressive intervention and rehabilitation. Partial recovery, not permanent paralysis. Evelyn pulled up the surgical notes from her emergency stabilization procedure, the operation Adrian had performed to save her life. It described internal fixation hardware, decompression of the spinal canal, and administration of high-dose methylprednisolone to reduce inflammation. Standard trauma protocol. Nothing experimental. Nothing that would necessitate 21 years of custom neurotherapy. She opened the brace specifications next. The technical documents Adrian's team had provided when they first designed the prototype. Load-bearing calculations, pressure distribution models, biomechanical stress analysis. Evelyn had been a medical student, not an engineer, but she understood enough. She'd taken biomechanics courses. She knew basic physics, and what she saw didn't make sense. The cervical mounting bolts were rated for sustained compression forces nearly 3 times higher than spinal support required. The design specs called for titanium alloy bolts capable of withstanding 450 newtons of continuous force, but typical cervical stabilization hardware maxed out around 150 newtons. Why would a support brace need triple the load capacity? Unless it wasn't just supporting, unless it was actively compressing. Evelyn's hand started shaking. She zoomed in on the interior schematic, the part of the brace that sat directly against her skin. The design showed thin embedded circuits running along the interior surface. She'd always assumed they were monitoring sensors, tracking her neurological responses, collecting data. But the circuit specifications listed them as transdermal delivery systems, chemical patches. Evelyn pulled up the compound analysis for her neurotherapy treatments, cross-referenced the molecular structures against the patch specifications. The chemistry was complex. Adrian's synthesis techniques were genuinely sophisticated, but the base compounds were identifiable. Dexamethasone derivatives, muscle relaxants in the benzodiazepine family, and something else. A proprietary molecule she didn't recognize, but the functional group suggested it was a cholinesterase inhibitor, nerve signal suppression. The patches in her brace were releasing the same compounds Adrian injected during therapy sessions. Slow-release neurological suppressants, chemicals that prevented nerve regeneration while mimicking the symptoms of permanent paralysis. Not treatments, inhibitors. Evelyn sat in the darkness of her office, the blue glow of computer screens washing over her face, and felt her entire world collapse. For 21 years, she'd trusted Dr. Adrian Vale with her life. He'd saved her, rebuilt her, given her a future when every other doctor said she'd never survive. And for 21 years, he'd been poisoning her. 3 days later, Daniel Cross stood in the biologistics supervisor's office, staring at a termination notice that felt like the final nail in a coffin he'd been building for 5 years. "I don't understand," he said, though he understood perfectly. "The incident report clearly states the container damage was accidental. I followed protocol for emergency notification." The incident report states you damaged a high-value medical shipment and made inappropriate comments to a client. His supervisor, a heavy-set man named Ron, who'd worked logistics for 30 years and hated every minute of it, didn't even look up from his computer. "Evelyn Mercer is one of our most important accounts. She requested your immediate termination and blacklisting from all medical routes. You're lucky she's not suing." I was trying to help her. By telling a biotech CEO that her medical treatment is fake? Ron finally looked at him, and his expression was somewhere between pity and contempt. "Daniel, I don't know what happened to you before you came here, but this job has one rule. Deliver the package, keep your mouth shut, go home. You couldn't manage that for 2 weeks. Daniel's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He thought about his daughter, about Lily's medical bills stacking up on the kitchen counter at home, sorted into piles marked urgent, overdue, and collections. About the insurance company's latest denial letter for the experimental treatment that might actually help her chronic condition instead of just managing symptoms until the inevitable happened. I need this job, he said quietly. You should have thought about that before you decided to play doctor with a billionaire's medical care. I wasn't playing. I know what I saw. You saw an opportunity to shift blame after you screwed up. Ron turned back to his computer. That's what I put in my report to corporate. You're done, Daniel. Clean out your locker. The termination was effective immediately. Daniel walked to the break room, opened locker 247, and stared at the pathetic contents. A spare uniform jacket he'd never need again. The photo of Lily he'd taped to the inside of the door, her kindergarten picture. The one where she was missing her 2 front teeth and smiling like nothing in the world could hurt her. She'd been healthy then, before the autoimmune flares started, before the hospital stays and the specialist appointments and the carefully worded conversations about managing expectations. Daniel took the photo down carefully, left the jacket. His car didn't start on the first try, or the second. The battery was dying, another expense he couldn't afford. It finally turned over on the 4th attempt, the engine coughing like a sick animal. Daniel sat there in the parking lot, hands on the steering wheel, wondering how exactly he'd fallen this far. MIT graduate, aerospace engineering, top 15% of his class. He'd worked on satellite propulsion systems for Lockheed Martin, designed stress analysis models for hypersonic aircraft at Northrop Grumman. Then his wife got sick. Cancer, aggressive, and expensive. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. He'd burned through their savings, keeping her alive for 2 extra years, cashed out his retirement accounts, sold their house, taken out loans he'd never be able to repay. And in the end, Sarah died anyway, leaving Daniel with a 4-year-old daughter and medical debt that would follow him for the rest of his life. That was 5 years ago. Since then, he'd gone from designing spacecraft to delivering medical supplies to rich people who wouldn't remember his name. And now he couldn't even do that. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Cross? A woman's voice, cold and professional. This is Marcus Chen, assistant to Evelyn Mercer. Miss Mercer would like to see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Daniel's stomach dropped. I don't think that's a good idea. It wasn't a request. She's prepared to withdraw her complaint with Biologistics if you agree to a private meeting. Otherwise, she'll proceed with legal action for damages to her medical treatment, lost productivity, and emotional distress. Legal action? I was just fired for 10 a.m., Mr. Cross. The address is 2247 Vallejo Street. Don't be late. The call ended. Daniel sat in his dying car in the November rain and wondered what fresh nightmare he'd just stumbled into. The next morning, he almost didn't go. But $47,000 in damages meant bankruptcy, meant losing the apartment, meant Lily's medication getting cut off because he couldn't afford the copays, meant his daughter dying because he'd been stupid enough to tell a billionaire the truth. So Daniel drove back to Russian Hill, past the mansions he'd never be able to afford, and pressed the intercom button at Evelyn Mercer's gate. You're early, Marcus said through the speaker. Traffic was light. The gate buzzed open. Daniel parked in the circular driveway, feeling intensely aware of how his 12-year-old Honda looked next to the collection of luxury vehicles in the garage. A Tesla, a Mercedes, something Italian and low-slung that probably cost more than his total lifetime earnings. He'd worn his one decent shirt and the tie Lily had picked out for him last Christmas, dark blue with little yellow stars. She'd been so proud of finding it at the Goodwill store. Marcus met him at the door, looking exactly as professional and intimidating as before. She's waiting in the East Study. Follow me. They walked through hallways that belonged in a museum. Original art on the walls. Daniel recognized a Rothko, maybe real, maybe reproduction. Marble floors that clicked under his worn boots. Everything cold and perfect and untouchable. Evelyn was sitting near the windows when they arrived, her wheelchair positioned to catch the morning light. She looked different than Daniel remembered. Smaller somehow, though no less intimidating. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from her face. No makeup. She wore a simple black sweater that somehow managed to look both casual and expensive. Mr. Cross, she gestured to a chair across from her. Sit. Daniel sat, waited. Evelyn studied him for a long moment, her eyes sharp and calculating. She looked tired, Daniel realized, like she hadn't slept in days. Finally, she said, "You're going to explain exactly what you meant about my spinal brace, and you're going to do it slowly, using language I can understand, because if you're wrong about any of this, I will destroy you, financially, professionally, and personally. Are we clear?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes. But if you're right," her voice dropped to something dangerous and desperate. "If you're right about even half of what you said, then I need you to help me prove it." And that's when Daniel realized this wasn't about the damaged delivery at all. This was about something much worse. Over the next 2 hours, Daniel explained everything he'd noticed that day in her office. The compression angles on the cervical mounts, the load-bearing specifications that didn't match standard spinal support requirements, the transdermal delivery systems embedded in the brace's interior surface. He spoke carefully, translating engineering concepts into language Evelyn could grasp, watching her face for signs she thought he was insane. She didn't interrupt once, just listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she turned her laptop toward him. "I found these 3 nights ago, after you left. I haven't slept more than a few hours since." Daniel leaned forward, scanning the documents on her screen. Medical records, engineering schematics, chemical compound analyses. His background in materials science and stress analysis kicked in immediately, parsing diagrams, tracking load distributions, identifying structural inconsistencies that shouldn't exist in properly designed medical equipment. And the more he read, the worse it got. "This mounting configuration," he said, pointing at a detailed cross-section of the brace's cervical attachment system. "These bolts are generating sustained compression force of around 380 newtons directly onto your C5 and C6 vertebrae. That's not stabilization. That's active compression designed to prevent any possible movement or healing." "Keep going." Daniel pulled up another file. The chemical specifications for the embedded patches. "These transdermal delivery systems are releasing a compound cocktail every 6 hours. Dexamethasone derivatives to suppress inflammation and prevent tissue repair. Muscle relaxants that mimic paralysis symptoms. And this one," he tapped the screen. "This proprietary molecule. I'd need to run it through a spectroscopy analysis to be certain, but the functional groups suggest it's blocking acetylcholine transmission, preventing your nerves from communicating with your muscles." Evelyn's face had gone pale. "So even if my spinal cord could heal naturally, these compounds would prevent it. Not just prevent it, actively suppress it. And the worst part?" Daniel scrolled through the treatment protocol files. "Dr. Vale's been giving you the same compounds intravenously 3 times a week, higher doses. The patches maintain a baseline suppression, and the injections reinforce it. For 21 years. For 21 years. The room went quiet. Outside, a delivery truck beeped as it reversed down the narrow street. Normal sounds from a normal day. But inside this office, 2 people were staring at evidence of a crime so methodical and cruel it almost defied comprehension. "Why would he do this?" Evelyn's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I don't understand why he would do this to me." Daniel sat back, running his hand through his hair. "May I ask you something?" "What?" "Who controls Mercer Biomedical?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "I do. I'm CEO and majority shareholder. But if you were incapacitated or declared incompetent, who would take over?" "The board would appoint an interim executive, probably." She stopped. Her hands gripped the wheelchair's armrests. "Adrian. As chief medical officer and longest-serving executive, the board would almost certainly appoint Adrian. And how much is the company worth?" "Last valuation was $3.2 billion. Daniel nodded slowly. "That's motive. Keep you alive but dependent. Unable to effectively run the company, but not sick enough to trigger a full transfer of power. He gets all the authority with none of the scrutiny. He's been running my company for 2 decades. Evelyn's voice shook with fury. "Every research decision, every patent filing, every clinical trial. I thought I was still in control, but he was just presenting me with options he'd already chosen, making me think I was deciding when he was orchestrating everything." "What kind of research has the company been focused on?" Evelyn pulled up financial reports, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Neurological therapeutics, spinal injury treatments, proprietary drug delivery systems. Adrian always said we were pioneering breakthrough treatments for paralysis patients, that we were on the verge of revolutionary protocols. But those treatments never materialized." We've had promising phase 2 results, strong animal model data, but nothing's made it to market in 15 years. She scrolled through pages of clinical trial reports, each one ending with similar language. Insufficient efficacy, adverse reactions requiring protocol modification, regulatory concerns necessitating additional studies. Daniel scanned the reports. He's been deliberately sabotaging your own research, making sure no actual treatments reach patients, because if they did, you might start asking why you're not receiving them. This can't be real, Evelyn's voice cracked. This can't actually be happening. I know how it sounds. Hide. No, you don't. She turned to face him fully, and Daniel saw tears in her eyes for the first time. You don't know what it's like to realize the person you trusted most in the world has been torturing you for profit. That every moment of pain, every year of being trapped in this chair, every time I looked at my own body and hated it for being broken, all of it was a lie. All of it was him. Daniel didn't know what to say. He'd lost his wife to a disease nobody could stop. That was tragedy, cruel and random. But what had been done to Evelyn was something else, something deliberate and calculated and infinitely worse. What do you need from me? He asked quietly. Evelyn wiped her eyes roughly, like she was angry at herself for crying. You said you were an aerospace engineer. That means you understand biomechanics, stress analysis, materials science. I need you to help me prove the brace is designed to harm me, not help me. I need engineering testimony that will hold up in court. I haven't worked in aerospace for 5 years. My credentials aren't exactly, you're more credible than me right now. I'm the victim. Anything I say will be dismissed as paranoid conspiracy. But an independent engineer analyzing the evidence, someone with no stake in the outcome, that's different. Daniel thought about his termination notice, about the bills waiting at home, about Lily asking last night why he looked so sad. He'd told her everything was fine, even though they both knew he was lying. What's in it for me? He asked. I'm not trying to be mercenary, but I have a daughter who needs medical care I can't afford. If I help you with this, it's going to consume weeks, maybe months of my time. Time I should be spending finding another job. Honestly? Evelyn's expression didn't soften. Probably nothing good. If we're right, Dr. Vale will fight back with every resource he has. Legal teams, private investigators, media manipulation. He's had 21 years to build his position. He won't give it up easily. That's a terrible sales pitch. I know, but here's what I can offer. She pulled up a document on her screen. A bank statement. I'll pay you $50,000 up front for your engineering analysis and testimony, plus all legal protection you'll need, attorneys, security, anything. And if we win, if we actually prove what he did and take back my company, I'll make sure you never have to worry about money again. Daniel stared at the number on the screen. $50,000. That was 6 months of Lily's treatment, maybe more. And if we lose, then we both go down. Vale will sue us into oblivion for defamation and harassment. You'll never work in engineering again. I'll probably lose the company entirely. She met his eyes. But at least we'll know we tried to stop him. The room fell silent again. Daniel thought about the first time he'd seen Lily in the hospital after she was born. How small she'd been. How fragile. Sarah had been exhausted and beautiful, holding their daughter like she was made of glass. They'd promised each other they'd protect her, give her the best life possible. He'd failed at that promise in so many ways already. But maybe this was a chance to succeed at something, to help someone who needed it, to use the skills he'd spent 15 years developing for something that actually mattered. Okay, he said. I'm in. Evelyn nodded once, and something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe. Or determination. Then we start now. I have a neurotherapy session scheduled with Dr. Vale tomorrow at 3. You'll be here to observe. Will he allow that? He won't know you're there. She gestured toward a door on the far side of the office. There's a storage closet that connects to the therapy room. Ventilation grate above the door has a direct sight line to the treatment area. You'll watch from there and document everything. You want me to spy on your doctor? I want you to witness a crime. Her voice went hard. And then I want you to help me make sure he never does it to anyone else. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he recognized from his own mirror. Desperation mixed with determination. The expression of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. He just hoped they both survived what came next. Daniel arrived the next day at 2:30, parking 3 blocks away, and walking to the mansion through the side gate Marcus had left unlocked. The assistant met him at the service entrance, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Mercer is in the main study," Marcus said quietly. "Dr. Vale arrives in 20 minutes. The storage closet is this way." They walked through corridors Daniel hadn't seen before. Service areas where the staff worked, far from the polished perfection of the main house. Marcus opened a narrow door near the back of the medical wing. "In here. There's a step stool under the shelf. The grate is at eye level once you're up there." Daniel stepped inside. The closet was cramped, filled with medical supplies and equipment. It smelled like antiseptic and old cardboard. He found the step stool, positioned it carefully, and climbed up. The ventilation grate was exactly where Marcus said it would be. Through the slats, Daniel had a clear view of Evelyn's therapy room. The space was clinical and efficient, adjustable medical table, monitoring equipment, cabinets full of supplies. Everything sterilized and organized, everything designed to look trustworthy. "Can you see?" Marcus asked from below. "Perfectly. I'll lock the door from outside so Dr. Vale doesn't accidentally open it. 3 knocks when he leaves, and I'll let you out." "Wait." Daniel looked down. "Why are you helping her with this?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I've worked for Ms. Mercer for 6 years. I've watched her push herself harder than anyone I've ever met. Building a company, managing hundreds of employees, fighting through pain that would destroy most people. And I've watched Dr. Vale treat her like she was fragile, incompetent, like she needed him to make every decision." His jaw tightened. "If he's been hurting her this whole time, then I want him destroyed." He left. The lock clicked. Daniel adjusted his position on the step stool and pulled out his phone, setting it to record video through the grate. Then he waited. Dr. Adrian Vale arrived exactly on time, his footsteps echoing in the hallway outside. Daniel heard him greeting Evelyn warmly, asking about her week, making small talk about a fundraiser dinner he'd attended. His voice was smooth and professional, caring. The door opened. Vale entered carrying his medical bag, looking distinguished and competent in his pressed slacks and button-down shirt. Late 50s, silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like everyone's image of a trustworthy physician. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, setting his bag on the counter. "Tired." Evelyn's voice sounded strained. "The last treatment left me worse than usual." "That's concerning. Let me check your vitals." Vale pulled out a blood pressure cuff, wrapping it around Evelyn's arm with practiced efficiency. "Any unusual symptoms? Muscle spasms? Autonomic dysfunction?" "Just exhaustion." "Your pressure's slightly elevated, 142/88. Have you been under additional stress?" "The Leiden trials are behind schedule. It's frustrating." "I can imagine." Vale removed the cuff, making notes on his tablet. "But you need to be careful not to overwork yourself. Stress can exacerbate your neurological symptoms." From his hiding spot, Daniel watched the performance. Vale's body language was perfect. Attentive, concerned, professional. Nothing in his demeanor suggested he was doing anything except caring for a patient. But then Vale opened his medical bag, and Daniel's engineering instinct screamed warnings. The doctor pulled out the prepared syringe, already loaded with Evelyn's treatment. Daniel zoomed his phone camera as much as possible, trying to capture details. The syringe was larger than standard, maybe 10 cubic centimeters instead of the typical 3 to 5. The liquid inside was slightly cloudy, not the clear solution most injectable medications used. "Today's compound has a slightly different formulation," Vale said, holding the syringe up to check it. "I've adjusted the methylprednisolone ratio to address your fatigue. You should feel more energized over the next few days." Liar, Daniel thought. Whatever was in that syringe had nothing to do with energy. "Adrian," Evelyn said carefully, "I've been thinking about my treatment protocol." Vale paused, the syringe still in his hand. "Oh? How much longer do I need to continue neurotherapy? It's been 21 years. Shouldn't my condition have stabilized by now?" "Your condition is stable. That's exactly why we continue treatment, to maintain the stability we've achieved." Vale prepared the injection site, swabbing Evelyn's arm with alcohol. "If we stopped now, you'd experience rapid neurological degradation, potentially catastrophic. But other paralysis patients don't require this level of ongoing treatment. Other paralysis patients don't have your specific injury profile." Vale's voice remained patient, but Daniel noticed a slight tension in his shoulders. "Evelyn, we've been through this before. Your case is unique. The protocols I've developed are specifically tailored to your neurological damage." "I'd like to get a second opinion." Now Vale did pause. He set the syringe down carefully, turning to face Evelyn fully. A second opinion? From whom? I haven't decided yet, but it seems reasonable after 2 decades of treatment to have another specialist review my case. Of course it's reasonable. Vale's voice stayed calm, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Though I should warn you that finding someone with the expertise to understand your treatment protocols will be challenging. Most neurologists work with standard paralysis cases. Your situation is far more complex. I understand. And any interruption in treatment while you seek additional opinions could be dangerous. Your neurological stability is dependent on consistent therapeutic intervention. There it was, the threat wrapped in medical language. Stop questioning me or you'll suffer. Evelyn held his gaze. I'll take that risk. Vale was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, if you're determined to pursue this, I can recommend several colleagues who might be willing to review your case. Dr. Patterson at Johns Hopkins has some experience with complex spinal injuries, though his approach is considerably more conservative than mine. Thank you. Of course. Vale picked up the syringe again. Shall we proceed with today's treatment, or would you prefer to wait until after you've consulted with another physician? It was a test. Daniel could see it in Vale's body language, the slight forward lean, the way he held the syringe where Evelyn could see it, reminding her that he controlled her medication, her stability, her life. Evelyn's hands tightened on her wheelchair armrests. Proceed. Vale administered the injection with his usual efficiency. Daniel recorded everything, noting the volume, the injection site, the way Evelyn's face tightened in pain as the compound entered her bloodstream. There, Vale said, applying a bandage. You should feel the effects within 30 minutes. Remember to stay hydrated and avoid strenuous activity for the rest of the day. I will. Vale packed up his medical bag, but he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he pulled over a chair and sat down facing Evelyn. I'm concerned about you. This isn't the first time you've questioned your treatment recently. Is something bothering you? I'm just tired, Adrian. It's more than that. You seem anxious, uncertain. He leaned forward slightly. Evelyn, I've known you for 21 years. You can talk to me. Daniel watched Evelyn's face, impressed despite himself by how well she maintained her composure. There's nothing to talk about. I'm simply being thorough. Is this about that courier? The one who damaged your medication? Evelyn's expression didn't change, but Daniel saw her fingers twitch slightly. What about him? Marcus mentioned the man made some inappropriate comments before he left. Something about your treatment being unnecessary? Vale's voice carried gentle concern. I hope you didn't take anything he said seriously. Untrained individuals often misunderstand complex medical protocols. He was just making excuses for his mistake. Good. Because people like that, desperate, looking for someone to blame, they can be dangerous, planting seeds of doubt to deflect from their own failures. Vale stood up, adjusting his glasses. Promise me if anyone else makes concerning claims about your treatment, you'll tell me immediately. Your well-being is my priority, Evelyn. Always has been. Of course. Vale left a few minutes later. Daniel stayed frozen on his step stool, phone still recording, until he heard 3 quiet knocks on the storage closet door. Marcus let him out. Did you get what you needed? Yeah. Daniel's hands were shaking slightly as he climbed down. I got it. They walked back through the service corridors in silence. When they reached the side exit, Marcus stopped. Mr. Cross? Be careful. Dr. Vale has destroyed people before. Anyone who questioned him or got in his way. They always ended up ruined, discredited, sometimes worse. Worse how? 3 years ago, a research director at Mercer Biomedical started asking questions about some of the clinical trial data. Claimed there were inconsistencies in the neurotherapy compound testing. 2 weeks later, he was dead. Car accident on Highway 101. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. Daniel's blood went cold. You think Vale? I think accidents happen to people who threaten powerful men. Marcus opened the door. Just be careful. Daniel left through the side gate, walking quickly to his car 3 blocks away. He didn't start feeling safe until he was on the freeway, heading back to his apartment. That evening, he met Evelyn in a coffee shop in the Mission District, far from Russian Hill and the places where anyone might recognize her. She'd come alone, maneuvering her wheelchair through the crowded cafe with practiced ease. They took a corner table where they could talk without being overheard. Did you see enough? She asked. Daniel pulled out his phone, queued up the video. Watch this part, when he's preparing the injection. They watched together, Daniel pointing out details. The unusual syringe size, the cloudy compound, Vale's body language when Evelyn questioned the treatment protocol. He's threatened by you asking questions, Daniel said. You saw how fast he tried to shut down the second opinion idea, offering to recommend specialists himself so he can control who you see. What do we do with this video? First, I need to analyze the actual brace, the physical hardware, get measurements, test the compression forces, document the transdermal delivery system. He paused. Can you take it off? Evelyn's face went pale. I've been wearing this brace for 21 years. Adrian always said removing it could cause catastrophic spinal instability. He also said you'd never walk again, and that your treatments were keeping you alive. Everything he's told you has been a lie designed to keep you trapped. But what if he's right about this? What if I take off the brace and my spine actually does collapse? Daniel understood her fear. It was the same fear he'd felt watching Sarah's health deteriorate, knowing that any decision he made could be the wrong one. We'll be careful, medical supervision, imaging equipment on standby. But Evelyn, as long as you're wearing that brace, you're being actively poisoned. Every hour, those patches are releasing compounds into your bloodstream. Evelyn was quiet for a long time. Then she said, There's a disgraced trauma surgeon who runs an underground clinic in the Tenderloin. Dr. Sarah Kim. She lost her license 5 years ago after performing an unauthorized emergency surgery that saved a patient's life but violated about 15 hospital protocols. She still treats people who can't afford proper health care. You want to go to an unlicensed doctor? I want to go to someone Vale doesn't know. Someone who isn't part of the medical establishment that's been covering for him. Evelyn's jaw set. Can you contact her? Set up a meeting? I'll try. And Daniel? She met his eyes. Thank you. For believing me, for risking this. Most people would have walked away. Most people didn't watch their wife die because the system valued profit over patience. Daniel's voice went rough. If there's a chance to stop someone like Vale, I have to try. They left separately, Evelyn heading back to her mansion, Daniel returning to the small apartment he shared with his daughter. Lily was already asleep when he got home, her breathing assisted by the nebulizer that helped manage her symptoms. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her chest rise and fall, wondering if he was making the right choice. Then he pulled out his laptop and started researching Dr. Sarah Kim. Nichabid. Finding the clinic took 2 days of careful inquiries and dead-end leads. Finally, a former colleague from Daniel's aerospace days who'd fallen on hard times gave him an address in the Tenderloin, a basement access below a closed laundromat. Daniel went alone first, making sure it wasn't a trap or a scam. The clinic was exactly what he expected, cramped, poorly lit, stocked with medical supplies that looked like they'd been salvaged from hospital dumpsters. But it was clean, and Dr. Kim was real. She was younger than Daniel expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and steady hands. She listened to his explanation without interrupting, her expression growing darker. Adrian Vale, she said when he finished. I've heard stories about him. Nothing I could prove, but doctors talk. He's got a reputation for experimental protocols that never quite work out. Patients who get worse instead of better. Can you help us? Removing a spinal brace after 21 years is dangerous, even under ideal conditions. In a basement clinic with minimal equipment, it could kill her. And leaving it on will kill her slowly. Dr. Kim studied him. Why are you doing this? What's in it for you? My daughter has an autoimmune condition. The insurance company won't cover the treatment that might actually help her. They'd rather pay for palliative care until she dies than invest in a potential cure. Daniel's hands clenched. Evelyn Mercer has been trapped by the same system. If we can prove what Vale did to her, it might expose the whole corrupt structure. And get you both killed in the process. Maybe, but at least we'll know we tried. Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment, then she sighed. Bring her tomorrow night, midnight, and bring cash. I'll need to acquire some equipment I don't currently have. Imaging capabilities, sterile instruments, monitoring gear. This isn't going to be cheap. How much? $15,000. Minimum. Daniel's stomach dropped, but he nodded. We'll have it. He called Evelyn from outside the clinic. I found someone, but it's going to cost $15,000, and it's happening in a basement in the Tenderloin at midnight tomorrow. I'll have the money. Evelyn's voice was steady. Send me the address. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. I've been trapped in this chair for 21 years, Daniel. I'm done being afraid. The line went dead. Daniel stood on the sidewalk in the Tenderloin, watching people shuffle past. The homeless, the addicted, the forgotten. The people the system had discarded. And he thought about how close he'd come to joining them. How close Lily still was. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid. The next night, Daniel picked up Evelyn at a service entrance to her mansion at 11:30. She'd told Marcus she was going to bed early. Her security team thought she was safely locked in her room. Nobody knew she was being helped into Daniel's dying Honda, her wheelchair folded and shoved into the trunk. They drove through the dark city in silence, Evelyn staring out the window at streets she'd probably never seen from this angle, from inside a car that smelled like French fries and had duct tape holding the passenger seat together. "This is what normal life looks like," Daniel said quietly. "For most of us. It's terrifying." "Yeah, it is." Dr. Kim was waiting when they arrived, the clinic prepped and ready. She'd managed to acquire portable imaging equipment and better monitoring gear than Daniel had expected. "Let's see what we're working with," she said, helping Evelyn onto the examination table. The first x-rays took 20 minutes to complete. When Dr. Kim pulled up the images on her laptop screen, all three of them stared in silence. "Your spinal cord was never severed," Dr. Kim said finally, pointing at the scans. "See here? The C6 burst fracture caused compression and swelling, but the cord itself maintained continuity. With proper treatment 21 years ago, you could have recovered partial or even full function." Evelyn's hands shook. "Are you certain?" "I'm certain that what Dr. Vale told you was a lie." Dr. Kim zoomed in on another section. "And this brace, the mounting hardware is compressing your spinal column by at least 15 millimeters. That's catastrophic. It's actively preventing any possible healing. Can you remove it?" "I can try, but Evelyn, you need to understand what you're facing. 21 years of compression and chemical suppression has caused significant muscle atrophy and neurological adaptation. Even if we remove the brace and stop the poisoning, recovery will be agonizing. Months or years of physical therapy. The pain will be worse than anything you've experienced." "Worse than being trapped in this chair?" Dr. Kim met her eyes. "Maybe. For a while." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Do it." The removal took 3 hours. Daniel watched from the corner, feeling useless and terrified, as Dr. Kim carefully disassembled the brace piece by piece. Each bolt removed made Evelyn gasp in pain. Tears streamed down her face, but she never asked them to stop. When the last piece came away, Evelyn's torso looked fragile and damaged. Her skin was pale and scarred where the hardware had pressed against it for 2 decades. The chemical patches left residue that Dr. Kim carefully cleaned away. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kim asked. "Like I'm going to fall apart." Evelyn's voice shook. "Everything hurts." "That's your nervous system waking up. The suppression is wearing off, and your nerves are firing for the first time in years." Dr. Kim administered a mild pain medication, nothing that would interfere with Evelyn's neurological recovery. "Over the next few days, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Your body is going to fight you. You'll experience withdrawal from the chemical compounds, muscle spasms, autonomic dysfunction, possibly seizures." "Where do I go? I can't go back to the mansion like this." Daniel had already thought about that. "My apartment. It's small and it's not fancy, but Vale doesn't know about it. You'll be safe there while the drugs clear your system." Evelyn looked at him like he'd offered her the world. "Thank you." They got her back into the wheelchair, now just for transport, not as a prison, and carefully loaded her into Daniel's car. Dr. Kim gave them detailed instructions for the next 72 hours, medications to manage symptoms, warning signs to watch for, emergency protocols if Evelyn's condition deteriorated. "One more thing," Dr. Kim said as they were leaving. "I kept several pieces of the brace hardware and samples of the chemical patches. For evidence. Whatever you're planning to do with this, make sure it counts." Daniel drove Evelyn back to his apartment in the Mission, carrying her up 3 flights of stairs because there was no elevator. Lily was staying at a friend's house for the weekend. Daniel had arranged it carefully, knowing he couldn't explain any of this to his 10-year-old daughter. He set Evelyn up in his bedroom, the only private space in the tiny apartment. She looked small and vulnerable without the massive wheelchair, lying on his cheap mattress under blankets that had seen better days. "This isn't what you're used to," he said awkwardly. "No." Evelyn's voice was weak but clear. "It's better. Because it's real." That first night was hell. Evelyn's body revolted against the sudden absence of the suppression compounds. She shook violently, her muscles spasming as her nervous system misfired. Daniel stayed with her, following Dr. Kim's protocols, monitoring her vital signs, keeping her hydrated and medicated. Around 3 in the morning, she started screaming. Not from pain, from rage. 21 years, she gasped between sobs. 21 years he stole from me. Every day I believed I was broken. Every time I looked at myself and felt disgusted. Every moment I thought I was weak for needing help. And it was all a lie. All of it. Daniel didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He just stayed there, present and solid, while she grieved for the life Vale had taken from her. By dawn, the worst of the withdrawal had passed. Evelyn lay exhausted on the bed, her face pale, but her eyes clear. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we gather evidence, document everything, build a case so airtight that even Vale's lawyers can't defend him." Daniel pulled out the x-rays Dr. Kim had given them. "And then we destroy him." Evelyn smiled, fierce and determined despite her exhaustion. "Good, because I want him to lose everything, the way I lost everything." "You didn't lose everything," Daniel said quietly. "You survived, and now you're going to take back what he stole." Outside, the sun rose over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. A new day dawning, and somewhere in Russian Hill, Dr. Adrian Vale was about to discover his carefully constructed lie was falling apart. 3 days later, Marcus called Daniel's phone at 6 in the morning, his voice tight with panic. "Dr. Vale knows something's wrong. He showed up at the mansion last night demanding to see Ms. Mercer. I told him she was resting and didn't want to be disturbed, but he's insisting on conducting an emergency evaluation today. He says her missed therapy sessions indicate a medical crisis." Daniel was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. "What did you tell him?" "That I'd relay the message. But Mr. Cross, he's not going to accept delays much longer. He looked suspicious, angry. How much time do we have?" "He's coming back at noon. 4 hours." Daniel ended the call and went to check on Evelyn. She was awake, propped up against pillows, looking better than she had in days, but still weak. The withdrawal symptoms had finally started to ease, but her body was paying the price for 2 decades of suppression. Every movement caused pain. Her muscles, atrophied from years of chemical paralysis, barely responded to her commands. "Vale's coming," Daniel said. "He knows something's wrong." Evelyn's face hardened. "Good. Let him come. I want to see his face when he realizes I'm not wearing his poison anymore." "Evelyn, we're not ready. We don't have enough evidence yet. Just the brace components and Dr. Kim's analysis. We need more. Financial records showing he profited from your condition. Communications proving he knew what he was doing. Witnesses who can testify to his control over the company. Then we get it. Today." She tried to sit up straighter and winced. "Help me to the wheelchair." "You can barely move." "I don't care. We're going back to the mansion, and we're getting everything we need before Vale destroys it." Her voice carried absolute certainty despite the tremor in her hands. "This is our only chance, Daniel. Once he realizes I've removed the brace, he'll lock down every file, every record, every piece of evidence. If we don't act now, we lose." Daniel knew she was right. He helped her into the wheelchair, moving carefully, supporting her weight as her legs refused to cooperate. The simple act of transferring from bed to chair left her sweating and exhausted. They made it to the car. Daniel called Marcus on the way. "We're coming to the mansion. We need access to Dr. Vale's office and Ms. Mercer's private files. Everything related to her medical treatment and the company financials. Dr. Vale's office is in the medical wing. It's locked, and I don't have a key." "Then we break in. Can you get us inside the mansion without security seeing?" "The service entrance. I'll disable the cameras in that corridor for 15 minutes. But after that, you're on your own." They arrived at the mansion 40 minutes later. Marcus met them at the service entrance, his face pale. "This is insane. If Dr. Vale finds out I helped you—" "He's already destroying people," Evelyn said, her voice strained but fierce. "It's time someone stopped him." Marcus led them through the corridors to Vale's office. The door was solid oak with a biometric lock. Daniel studied it for a moment, then pulled out his phone. "I'm going to need some tools. Is there a maintenance room nearby?" 2 doors down. 5 minutes later, Daniel had what he needed, a screwdriver set and a small pry bar. The biometric lock was sophisticated, but the door frame wasn't reinforced properly. Basic security theater designed to look impressive without actually being impenetrable. He wedged the pry bar into the gap between door and frame, applying steady pressure until the latch mechanism gave way with a crack. The office was exactly what Daniel expected. Expensive furniture, medical journals on the shelves, diplomas from prestigious universities on the walls. Everything designed to project competence and authority. Evelyn rolled to the desk and started opening drawers. Her hands shook from exertion and withdrawal, but she moved with determination. Look for anything related to my treatment protocols, financial records, communications about the company. Daniel went to the filing cabinets while Marcus stood watch at the door. The files were meticulously organized, 21 years of medical records, research notes, clinical observations. Daniel started photographing pages with his phone, working as fast as he could. Then Evelyn found the laptop. Daniel, look at this. The computer was password protected, but Vale had made a critical mistake. He'd left it in sleep mode rather than fully shut down. Evelyn woke the screen, and a spreadsheet appeared. Financial projections for Mercer Biomedical spanning the next 5 years. This is the company's strategic plan, Evelyn said, scrolling through the document. But I've never seen this version before. These numbers don't match what the board approved. Daniel leaned over her shoulder, scanning the data. Revenue projections showed a massive spike in year 3, tied to something labeled Project Chrysalis. The projected income was staggering, over $2 billion from a single pharmaceutical product line. What's Project Chrysalis? Daniel asked. Evelyn's face went white. I don't know. I've never heard of it. She opened another file. Clinical trial data for an experimental paralysis treatment. But the dates didn't make sense. The trials had been conducted over the past 3 years, using patient data Evelyn had never authorized. The test subjects showed remarkably positive responses to a new neurotherapy compound. A compound that looked almost identical to the suppression drugs Vale had been giving Evelyn, just with the molecular structures reversed. He's been developing the cure, Evelyn whispered. The whole time he was poisoning me, he was perfecting a treatment that could actually help paralysis patients. And he was planning to launch it himself, using my company's resources. Daniel felt sick. Let me see the financial projections again. Evelyn pulled up the spreadsheet. Daniel traced the revenue models, cross-referencing them with the clinical data. The pattern became clear. He was going to keep you dependent until Project Chrysalis launched. Then he'd discover that your specific injury profile responded to the new treatment. You'd be his miracle patient, proof the therapy worked. The publicity alone would drive stock prices through the roof, and with you grateful for your recovery, he'd have complete control of the company during the most profitable phase. But why keep me paralyzed for 21 years? Why not just develop the treatment and use it? Because he needed time to patent every aspect of the therapy under Mercer Biomedical's name, time to set up the manufacturing infrastructure, time to position himself as the genius behind the breakthrough. Daniel pointed at the financial models. Look at the profit margins. He's planning to charge $300,000 per treatment course. With millions of paralysis patients worldwide, that's trillions of dollars. Evelyn's voice was hollow. He was building an empire on human suffering, my suffering. Ms. Mercer. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face panicked. Dr. Vale just pulled up outside. He's early. Copy everything, Evelyn said, her hands flying across the keyboard. Every file on this computer. There's no time. Make time. Daniel grabbed a USB drive from Vale's desk drawer and started the transfer. The progress bar crawled across the screen, 12%. 15%, 20%. Outside, they could hear Vale's voice in the main hall, asking where Miss Mercer was. Marcus told him you were in your private office, Marcus whispered. That buys us maybe 2 minutes. 35%, 40%. Vale's footsteps echoed in the hallway, getting closer, 50%. He's coming this way, Marcus said. Evelyn closed her eyes. Daniel, take the drive and go. Get out through the service entrance. I'm not leaving you. He can't hurt me physically. Not here, not now. But if he catches you with that evidence, he'll destroy it and claim you fabricated everything. She met his eyes. Go. Finish this. 65%. Vale's footsteps stopped outside the door. 70%. The doorknob rattled. Why is my office door damaged? 85%. Now, Daniel, the transfer hit 100%. Daniel yanked the USB drive, shoved it in his pocket, and ran for the service corridor. Behind him, he heard the office door slam open. Evelyn? Vale's voice shifted from confusion to shock. Where's your brace? Daniel didn't stop to hear her response. He sprinted through the service corridors, Marcus's directions echoing in his head. Left at the kitchen, right past the laundry room, straight to the exit. He made it to his car and drove 3 blocks before pulling over, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the steering wheel. His phone rang. Evelyn. "Are you safe?" Her voice was tight. "Yeah, I got out. What about you?" Vale is, he's trying to convince me I've made a terrible mistake, that removing the brace will kill me. He's insisting on emergency medical intervention. Don't let him touch you. I won't. But Daniel, he knows we're coming for him. I can see it in his eyes. He's already planning his defense. Let him plan. We've got his files, evidence of fraud, medical malpractice, conspiracy. Enough to bury him. It's not enough. Evelyn's voice dropped. We need something that proves intent. Something that shows he knew exactly what he was doing from the beginning. Otherwise, his lawyers will claim it was all unfortunate mistakes, experimental treatments that had unexpected side effects. Daniel thought about the files he'd copied, the clinical trials, the financial projections. It was damning, but Evelyn was right. A good legal team could spin it as well-intentioned research gone wrong. What about communications? Emails, phone records, anything showing he discussed the plan with someone else? His personal communications would be on his phone or his home computer, not the office laptop. Daniel's mind raced. Where does he live? Pacific Heights, 2847 Broadway. But Daniel, that's breaking and entering. If you get caught, I'm already in too deep to worry about that. He pulled back onto the road. I'll call you when I have something. Wait, his security system is sophisticated. You can't just break a window. I'm an engineer, remember? I'll figure it out. He ended the call before she could argue further. Vale's house was a Victorian mansion that probably cost $15 million, situated on a tree-lined street where every property screamed old money. Daniel parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, trying to look like he belonged there. The security was visible from the street, cameras on the corners, motion sensors in the landscaping, a professional system designed to keep people out. But security systems had weaknesses. They always did. Daniel circled the block, studying the house from different angles. The cameras covered the main entrances and the ground floor windows, but there was a blind spot near the garage where 2 camera fields didn't quite overlap. He checked his phone. 1:15 in the afternoon. Vale was still at Evelyn's mansion, which meant the house should be empty. Daniel slipped into the gap between camera coverage and approached the garage. The side door was locked, but the frame was old wood that had warped slightly over the years. He used the pry bar from earlier, working carefully, applying pressure until the lock gave way. Inside, the garage was immaculate. A black Mercedes, probably worth more than Daniel's entire life savings. Shelves of organized tools and supplies. Everything in its place. Daniel moved quickly through the interior door into the house itself. The alarm system beeped, 30 seconds to enter the code before it triggered. He pulled out his phone and called a number he'd found earlier through some creative searching. Sentinel Security Systems, how can I help you? Daniel disguised his voice, making it deeper, more authoritative. This is Dr. Adrian Vale. I'm having trouble with my home system. It's beeping and I can't remember the disarm code. I'll need to verify your identity, sir. What's your account number? I don't have it with me, but I can give you my address and date of birth. The security representative hesitated. Sir, I really need the account number. Look, I'm a physician. I'm trying to get home between patient appointments and my system is malfunctioning. Can you help me or not? The representative sighed. What's the address? Daniel gave it. The representative typed for a moment. Dr. Vale, I'm showing your system is currently in entry delay mode. Do you want me to remotely disarm it? Yes, please, immediately. Done. Is there anything else I can help with today? No, thank you. Daniel ended the call just as the beeping stopped. Social engineering, the oldest hack in the book. Security systems were only as strong as the humans operating them. He moved through the house quickly, looking for Vale's home office. Found it on the 2nd floor, another carefully curated space designed to project success and competence. The computer here was newer, more secure. Daniel didn't have time to crack it, so he focused on the physical files. Medical journals, research papers, correspondence with other physicians. Then he found the safe. It was hidden behind a bookshelf, revealed when Daniel accidentally leaned against a specific volume and triggered a release mechanism. The safe itself was biometric, fingerprint scanner and keypad combination. Daniel stared at it, frustrated. He didn't have Vale's fingerprint, and he didn't have time to crack a safe that probably cost $50,000. But he did have a phone with a decent camera. He photographed everything in the office, Every paper, every file, every visible surface. Maybe something in the photographs would give him a clue. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. Vale just left, said he's going home to gather medical records that will prove removing the brace was dangerous. He'll be there in 20 minutes. Daniel swore and worked faster, pulling open desk drawers, photographing contents, looking for anything incriminating. Bottom drawer, buried under tax documents, he found a leather journal. The entries were handwritten, dated, personal. Daniel flipped through pages, his heart pounding. The first entry was dated 22 years ago, before the accident. Met with EM today. Brilliant young woman, recently graduated from Stanford Medical. Her parents' company has extraordinary potential, but their conservative approach limits growth. If properly managed, Mercer Biomedical could dominate the neurotherapy market within a decade. EM lacks the vision to see it. Perhaps that will change. Daniel kept reading, his hands trembling. 3 months later. EM's accident presents an unexpected opportunity. The spinal injury is significant but not catastrophic. Standard treatment protocol would likely result in partial recovery. However, with careful management, her condition could be maintained indefinitely. This would allow for long-term influence over company direction while she remains nominally in control. Must consider ethical implications, but the potential benefits are substantial. 6 months after the accident, brace design complete. The compression mechanism will prevent natural healing while appearing to provide support. Combined with neurological suppressants administered as therapy, EM's paralysis can be maintained without arousing suspicion. Her gratitude for my efforts ensures complete trust. The company is now effectively under my control. Daniel felt sick reading it. This wasn't malpractice or negligence. This was premeditated destruction of another human being for profit. He kept photographing pages, working through years of entries. Vale had documented everything: the development of the suppression compounds, the sabotage of legitimate research that might have helped Evelyn, the construction of Project Chrysalis using her company's resources. The most recent entry was dated 2 weeks ago. EM is showing signs of questioning her treatment. The courier incident seems to have planted seeds of doubt. Must monitor carefully. If she becomes too suspicious, may need to accelerate Project Chrysalis' timeline and stage her recovery earlier than planned. The risk is that premature launch could affect stock valuations, but maintaining her trust is paramount. Daniel photographed the last page just as he heard a car pull into the driveway. Vale was home. Daniel shoved the journal back into the drawer, closed everything carefully, and ran for the stairs. He made it to the first floor just as he heard the garage door opening. No time to go back that way. He sprinted for the kitchen looking for another exit, found a door leading to the back garden. Locked. The garage door into the house opened. "Hello? Is someone there?" Daniel grabbed a kitchen towel, wrapped it around his fist, and punched through the window next to the door. The glass shattered. He reached through, unlocked the door, and threw himself outside. Behind him, Vale shouted. Footsteps pounded through the house. Daniel ran through the garden, vaulted over the back fence, and landed hard in the neighbor's yard. A dog started barking. He kept running, cutting through side yards and between houses until he hit the next street over. His car was 2 blocks away. He forced himself to walk normally despite the adrenaline screaming through his system. Don't run. Don't attract attention. Just a guy walking to his car. He made it to the Honda, got in, and drove away carefully, checking the mirrors constantly. No one followed. 3 blocks away, he pulled over and checked his phone. Dozens of photographs of Vale's journal. Proof of intent, proof of conspiracy, proof of everything they needed. He called Evelyn. "I got it. Handwritten confession spanning 21 years. He documented everything." "Are you safe?" "Yeah." "He knows someone was in his house, but he didn't see me." "Then we have what we need. Come back to the mansion. We're ending this today." Daniel drove back to Russian Hill, the USB drive and his phone containing enough evidence to destroy Adrian Vale completely. But as he pulled up to the mansion's service entrance, he saw something that made his blood run cold. 3 black SUVs parked in the driveway. Men in suits standing by the vehicles. Vale had called in reinforcements. Marcus met Daniel at the service door, his face ashen. Dr. Vale brought his lawyers and a team of private security. He's claiming Miss Mercer is experiencing a mental health crisis and needs immediate psychiatric intervention. He's trying to have her declared incompetent. "Where is she?" "Main study. She refused to go with them, and they can't forcibly remove her from her own house without a court order. But Mr. Cross, they're already drafting emergency conservatorship papers. If a judge signs them, Vale will have complete legal authority over her medical care, and her company. Daniel thought fast. How long do we have? Vale's assistant is at the courthouse now, maybe 2 hours before they come back with the paperwork. Then we go to the media, release everything we have to every news outlet in the Bay Area. Once it's public, Vale can't hide behind legal maneuvers. The evidence is legally questionable. You broke into his house to get that journal. His lawyers will claim it's inadmissible. I don't care about admissible. I care about public opinion. Once people see what he did, no court will grant him conservatorship over his victim. Daniel pulled out his phone and started composing an email. He attached every photograph of the journal, the files from Vale's office computer, the x-rays showing Evelyn's spine was never permanently damaged, the video of her therapy session. He addressed it to the San Francisco Chronicle, the Mercury News, every local TV station, and 3 national investigative journalists he'd found through internet research. Subject line, Biotech CEO held prisoner by physician for 21 years. Evidence inside. His finger hovered over the send button. Once I do this, there's no taking it back, he said to Marcus. Vale will come after both of us with everything he has. Then we'd better make sure he loses. Daniel hit send. The emails went out simultaneously to 17 different recipients. Then he called Dr. Sarah Kim. I need you to go on record, he said when she answered. Everything you saw when you removed Evelyn's brace. Medical testimony that her paralysis was artificially maintained. I could lose my medical license permanently. What's left of it? Dr. Vale is trying to have Evelyn declared incompetent so he can continue controlling her. If we don't stop him now, she goes back into that wheelchair, and the poisoning continues. And Project Chrysalis launches, making him billions while millions of patients suffer. Dr. Kim was quiet for a long moment. Then, send me the journalist contacts. I'll give them everything. Daniel forwarded the information and went to find Evelyn. She was in the main study, surrounded by Vale's lawyers and security team. But she wasn't backing down. Even exhausted and in pain, she sat in her wheelchair like it was a throne, facing them with absolute defiance. Ms. Mercer, you need to understand the seriousness of your condition, one of the lawyers was saying. Removing your spinal brace without medical supervision was a catastrophic decision. Dr. Vale is deeply concerned about your mental state. Dr. Vale is concerned about losing control of my company, Evelyn shot back. And I have news for all of you. In about 15 minutes, every major news outlet in California is going to receive evidence proving he's been committing medical fraud for 2 decades. So you might want to reconsider which side of this you're on. The lawyer's expression faltered. Miss Mercer, making unfounded accusations? Bums. They're not unfounded. We have his journal. His own handwriting describing how he deliberately kept me paralyzed. We have financial records showing he planned to profit from my suffering. We have medical evidence proving my spine was never as damaged as he claimed. Vale himself stepped forward, his face calm but his eyes furious. Evelyn, you're clearly experiencing a psychological break. The stress of discontinuing your treatment has affected your judgment. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to save yourself. Evelyn's voice carried steel. But it's too late, Adrian. The truth is already out there. As if on cue, Daniel's phone started buzzing. Text messages from blocked numbers. Journalists responding to the evidence. 3 had already published online articles. 2 TV stations were preparing emergency segments for the evening news. The story was breaking. Vale's calm facade cracked. You have no idea what you've done. Everything I built, everything I worked for, you built it on my broken body, Evelyn said quietly. You stole 21 years of my life. You poisoned me, trapped me, used me, and you convinced me to be grateful for it. I saved your life. You destroyed it. The words tore out of Evelyn like a physical thing. I believed I was broken because you told me I was. I hated myself because you made me dependent. Every single day for 21 years, I looked at this wheelchair and thought I was weak, that I was less than human, and it was all a lie you created to steal my company. The room had gone completely silent. Even Vale's lawyers looked uncomfortable. I gave you everything, Vale said, and for the first time Daniel heard something genuine in his voice. Pain, maybe, or regret. Your company would have stagnated under your parents' leadership. I made Mercer Biomedical into a powerhouse. I advanced neurological research by decades. The treatments I developed will help millions of people. By torturing one person for 2 decades? Daniel stepped forward. You're not a visionary. You're a monster who convinced yourself the ends justified the means. Vale turned to him, and the mask finally dropped completely. You're nobody. A failed engineer playing hero. When this is over, you'll go back to delivering packages and I'll still be standing. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, connections, political influence. You think releasing some photographs to journalists will stop me? I think the FBI will be interested in your fraud, Daniel said. And the medical board will revoke your license. And Mercer Biomedical's board will remove you the moment they realize you've been using company resources to develop treatments you plan to sell for personal profit. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Evelyn pulled up her laptop, turned it around. On the screen was the Project Chrysalis file. This is corporate theft, Adrian. You used my company's R&D budget, my facilities, my researchers to develop a treatment you plan to patent under your own name. That's fraud. That's embezzlement. That's about 15 different felonies. Vale stared at the screen, his face going gray. It's over, Evelyn said softly. Whatever you thought you were building, whatever you believed you were accomplishing, it's finished, and you did it to yourself. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Dr. Vale, I think we should leave now, and I strongly recommend you retain criminal counsel. They left in a rush, the security team following, the lawyers already on their phones. Vale was the last to go, standing in the doorway, looking at Evelyn with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. I did save your life, he said quietly. After the accident, before I made the other decisions, for the first few weeks, I genuinely tried to help you. I want you to know that. But it wasn't enough, Evelyn said. Saving me once didn't give you the right to destroy me for 21 years. Vale left without another word. Evelyn sat in the sudden silence, trembling. Daniel moved to her side and she grabbed his hand like it was the only solid thing in the universe. Is it really over? She whispered. Not yet. He'll fight back. But we hurt him. Badly. I can't feel my legs. Her voice broke. I thought removing the brace would fix everything, but I still can't feel anything below my waist. Dr. Kim said recovery would take months, maybe years. Your body needs time to heal from what he did. What if it never heals? What if I went through all of this and I'm still trapped? Daniel knelt beside her wheelchair, meeting her eyes. Then you're still free. Because even if your legs never work again, you're not poisoned anymore. You're not controlled anymore. You made your own choice, and nobody can take that from you. Evelyn's tears finally came, and Daniel stayed there while she cried, his hand holding hers, while outside the sun set over San Francisco and the news vans started arriving at the mansion gates. The war wasn't over, but they'd survived the first battle. The media firestorm hit within hours. By 9 that evening, Evelyn's face was on every news channel in California. Biotech CEO claims 2 decades of medical imprisonment. Physician accused of deliberately maintaining patient's paralysis. Mercer Biomedical scandal, fraud, conspiracy, and corporate theft. Daniel watched the coverage from Evelyn's study while she fielded calls from lawyers, board members, and journalists. Her voice remained steady despite the exhaustion etched into her face. She'd changed into fresh clothes, simple black slacks and a gray sweater, but she still looked fragile, small. Nothing like the terrifying CEO he'd first met. No comment until my attorney releases an official statement, she said into the phone for the 7th time. Yes, I'm aware of Dr. Vale's counterclaims. No, I'm not experiencing a mental health crisis. Thank you. She ended the call and closed her eyes. Vale's PR team is already spinning this. They're saying I became addicted to pain medications and developed paranoid delusions, that I attacked him because he refused to enable my addiction. Nobody's going to believe that once they see the evidence. You'd be surprised what people believe when it's presented by expensive lawyers. Evelyn opened her laptop, scrolling through news coverage. Look at this. Sources close to Dr. Vale suggest Ms. Mercer has struggled with mental health issues since her accident. Her recent erratic behavior, including firing loyal staff and making unfounded accusations, indicates a concerning pattern. Daniel read over her shoulder, his anger rising. They're trying to discredit you before the evidence even gets examined. Of course they are. It's standard crisis management. Destroy the victim's credibility so thoroughly that nothing they say matters. She clicked to another article. This one was more balanced, actually quoting from Vale's journal entries. But some journalists are doing their jobs. This reporter from the Chronicle called Dr. Kim, got her testimony on record about the brace removal. How's Kim holding up? Scared. Vale's lawyers sent her a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if she continues making defamatory statements about his medical practice. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He's going after everyone who helped us. Let him try. We've got his own handwriting proving everything. Handwriting you obtained illegally by breaking into his home. His lawyers are already claiming the journal is inadmissible evidence obtained through criminal activity. She turned to face Daniel fully. They're building a case to have you arrested for burglary, breaking and entering, and theft. If they succeed, everything you found gets thrown out. Daniel's stomach dropped. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Hadn't considered that exposing Vale's crimes might mean confessing to his own. I don't regret it, he said quietly. Even if I go to jail, at least the truth is out there. You have a daughter, Daniel. Who takes care of her if you're in prison? The words hit like a physical blow. Lily. He'd been so focused on stopping Vale that he hadn't fully processed the consequences. If he got arrested, if he went to trial, Lily would end up in foster care. Or worse, with Sarah's sister in Phoenix who'd never wanted kids and made that abundantly clear. I can't let that happen, he said. Then we need to be smarter about this. Evelyn pulled up a document on her laptop. I've hired a criminal defense attorney for you, Rachel Torres. She's one of the best in the city. She'll argue that you had reasonable cause to believe I was in immediate danger, that obtaining the evidence was necessary to prevent ongoing harm. It's not a perfect defense, but it might keep you out of prison. Evelyn, I can't afford... You're not paying for it. I am. You risked everything to help me. The least I can do is make sure you don't lose your daughter because of it. Daniel didn't know what to say. He settled for a simple, thank you. His phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. This is Rachel Torres. Need to meet ASAP to discuss your legal situation. Available tonight? Daniel showed Evelyn the message. She nodded. Go. I'll be fine here. Are you sure Vale might... Vale is dealing with his own problems right now. And Marcus is here, plus the security team. I'm probably safer than you are. Daniel wasn't convinced, but he left anyway, driving to Rachel Torres' office in the financial district. She was younger than he expected. Mid-30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than his car. Her office overlooked the bay, all glass and steel, and intimidating success. Mr. Cross, she gestured to a chair. Let's talk about how much trouble you're in. How bad is it? Bad. Dr. Vale's legal team filed a police report this afternoon claiming you broke into his residence and stole personal property. They're pushing for felony charges, burglary, theft, possibly stalking, given that you also broke into Ms. Mercer's property previously. I had permission to be at the mansion, which you can't prove without Miss Mercer's testimony, which Vale's team will claim is unreliable due to her supposed mental health crisis. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Here's what they're building. You're a disgruntled ex-employee who became obsessed with Ms. Mercer. You fabricated evidence of medical malpractice to justify your criminal behavior. You manipulated a vulnerable woman into believing her trusted physician was harming her. That's insane. The journal is real. The evidence is real. Evidence obtained illegally is still inadmissible in court. And even if we get it admitted, Vale's team will argue the journal entries are taken out of context, that they represent his private thoughts and concerns, not actual intent to harm. Daniel felt the walls closing in. So what do? We need corroborating evidence that doesn't come from illegal searches. Medical records from independent physicians. Testimony from other people Vale has harmed. Financial records showing his profit from Ms. Mercer's condition. Anything that supports your claims without relying on that journal. How long do we have? Vale's team will push for your arrest within 72 hours, unless we can demonstrate to the DA that prosecuting you would expose a larger crime. So we have 3 days to build an airtight case against Adrian Vale. That's impossible. Probably. But impossible is better than hopeless. So let's get to work. They worked until 2 in the morning, building a strategy. Rachel would reach out to former Mercer biomedical employees, looking for anyone willing to testify about Vale's control over the company. She'd also contact medical ethics boards and regulatory agencies, filing formal complaints that would trigger official investigations. Daniel's job was to find the financial trail. If Vale had profited from Evelyn's condition, there would be money somewhere. Offshore accounts, shell companies, unexplained income. He just had to find it. He got home at 3, exhausted and wired. Lily was asleep at their neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Chen had been watching her for the past few days, asking fewer questions than she probably should have. Daniel paid her what he could afford and carried his daughter home, tucking her into bed. She stirred as he pulled the blanket up. "Dad? Hey, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Are you okay? You look sad." Daniel forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired. Mrs. Chen said you were on TV. She said you're helping someone." "Yeah, I'm trying to." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mom used to say helping people was the most important thing, even when it's hard." Daniel's throat tightened. "Your mom was right. Is it hard now?" "Yeah, it's pretty hard." "But you're still doing it?" "I'm trying." Lily smiled sleepily. "Then I'm proud of you." She fell back asleep, leaving Daniel sitting on the edge of her bed, wondering if she'd still be proud when he got arrested and she ended up in foster care. He spent the next day digging through financial records. Evelyn had given him access to Mercer Biomedical's accounting systems, and what he found was staggering. Over the past 21 years, the company had paid out nearly $40 million to a consulting firm called Helix Solutions. The payments were categorized as research advisory services, but when Daniel traced Helix Solutions through corporate databases, he found something interesting. The company was registered in Delaware with a single owner, AV Holdings. Adrian Vale's initials. Daniel called Rachel immediately. "I found it. Vale's been funneling company money to himself through a shell corporation, $40 million over 2 decades. Can you prove he controls Helix Solutions?" The corporate registration lists AV Holdings as the owner. That's not definitive, but it's damn suspicious. "Get me everything you have. I'll bring it to the DA this afternoon." Daniel sent the files and kept searching. The more he dug, the worse it got. Helix Solutions had received payments not just from Mercer Biomedical, but from 3 other pharmaceutical companies, always for research advisory services, always in amounts just below the threshold that would trigger automatic audits. Vale had been running this scam for years, using multiple companies to hide the money trail. By evening, Rachel had more news. "The DA is interested. Not interested enough to drop the charges against you, but interested enough to open an investigation into Vale's finances. That buys us time." "How much time?" "Maybe a week, possibly 2 if we're lucky." It wasn't enough, but it was something. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus called Daniel late that night, his voice tight with urgency. "I found something in Ms. Mercer's old medical records, the ones from right after the accident." "What did you find?" Dr. Vale wasn't the attending physician in the emergency room that night. Someone else was, Dr. Patricia Reeves. She's the one who performed the initial assessment and stabilization surgery, but her name doesn't appear anywhere in the subsequent treatment records. It's like she disappeared from the case completely. Daniel felt electricity run through him. "Where is she now?" "That's the thing. I can't find her. She left San Francisco General 6 months after Miss Mercer's accident. No forwarding address. No current medical license. It's like she vanished." People don't just vanish, especially doctors, unless someone made them vanish. Daniel thought about what Marcus had said earlier, about the research director who died in a convenient car accident, about people who got in Vale's way ending up ruined or dead. "Find her," Daniel said, "whatever it takes. If Dr. Reeves was the original attending physician, she might know what really happened that night. She might have evidence that Vale's treatment plan was wrong from the beginning." Marcus worked his contacts while Daniel searched online databases. Rachel used her legal connections to pull medical licensing records. It took 36 hours of relentless searching before they finally found a lead. Patricia Reeves was living in a small town in Oregon under her married name, working as a nurse at a rural clinic. Not practicing medicine anymore. Barely existing. Daniel drove 8 hours north, arriving in the tiny coastal town of Brookings just after dawn. The clinic was a converted house on the edge of town, painted pale blue, with a wooden sign that needed fresh paint. Dr. Reeves, now Patricia Chen, answered the door herself. She was in her late 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes that went hard when Daniel introduced himself. "I don't talk about my time at San Francisco General," she said immediately. "Please, just 5 minutes. It's about Evelyn Mercer." Her expression shifted. Something like pain flickered across her face. "How is she?" "She's alive, recovering, but she spent 21 years in a wheelchair because of treatment decisions made after her accident." Patricia's hands tightened on the doorframe. "I tried to warn them. I told the hospital board that Vale's protocols were wrong, that the patient's injury wasn't as severe as he was claiming. They didn't listen." "Can you tell me what happened? Everything?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. Her living room was small and cluttered with medical textbooks. She made coffee with shaking hands while Daniel waited, and then she told him everything. I was the attending physician in the ER when they brought Evelyn Mercer in. 26 years old, spinal trauma from a car accident. The initial imaging showed a C6 burst fracture with incomplete cord injury, serious but not hopeless. I stabilized her spine, started her on methylprednisolone to reduce inflammation, and admitted her for monitoring. That's standard protocol, right? Yes. And for the first week, she showed promising signs. Some sensation returning to her extremities, good motor response in her upper body. I was cautiously optimistic about partial recovery. So what happened? Patricia's face darkened. Adrian Vale happened. He was a visiting consultant at the hospital, brilliant reputation, cutting-edge research in neurological trauma. He reviewed Evelyn's case and insisted on taking over her treatment, said he had experimental protocols that could prevent further degradation. Did you agree with his assessment? No. His treatment plan made no sense to me. He wanted to put her in a custom spinal brace with compression specifications that seemed excessive. He wanted to administer neurological suppressants that would inhibit her body's natural healing response. When I questioned him, he said I was being conservative, that his methods were too advanced for traditional physicians to understand. What did you do? I filed a formal objection with the hospital board, documented my concerns about his treatment protocols, argued that Evelyn should continue with standard rehabilitation therapy instead of his experimental approach. Patricia's voice went hollow. The board sided with Vale. He was famous, well-connected, and Evelyn's family had just donated $5 million to the hospital's research wing. No one wanted to contradict the genius physician. So they removed you from the case. Worse, they suggested I was experiencing professional jealousy, that I was undermining a more qualified physician because I resented his expertise. She laughed bitterly. 6 months later, I was forced to resign after a series of complaints about my patient care. Complaints that appeared out of nowhere, from patients I'd never even treated. Vale destroyed your career. He made sure I could never practice medicine again. I moved here, changed my name, tried to forget. She met Daniel's eyes. But I never forgot Evelyn Mercer. I used to search for news about her just to see if she'd recovered. When I saw she was still in a wheelchair after all these years, I knew I'd been right. I knew Vale had done something terrible to her. Would you be willing to testify, to go on record about what happened? Patricia was quiet for a long time. If I do, he'll come after me again, destroy what's left of my life. He's already doing that to other people, and he'll keep doing it unless someone stops him. She closed her eyes, took a breath. What do you need me to do? Daniel recorded her testimony right there in her living room, using his phone's video camera. Patricia described everything: the initial assessment, her objections to Vale's treatment plan, the hospital board's decision to side with him, the systematic destruction of her career when she wouldn't back down. It took 2 hours to get everything on record. When they finished, Patricia looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. Like she'd been carrying this weight for 15 years and had finally set it down. Thank you, Daniel said. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we see if it actually makes a difference. Daniel drove back to San Francisco, the video testimony backed up on 3 different devices in case something happened to his phone. He went straight to Rachel's office. She watched the video twice, making notes. This is good. This is really good. An attending physician from the night of the accident contradicting Vale's treatment decisions. It establishes a pattern of medical malpractice and career destruction. Is it enough? Combined with the financial evidence and the journal entries, it might be. I can take this to the DA tomorrow, argue that prosecuting you would interfere with a major criminal investigation. What are our chances? Honestly, maybe 50-50. But that's better odds than we had yesterday. Daniel left her office and drove to the mansion to update Evelyn. He found her in the physical therapy room, working with a rehabilitation specialist Dr. Kim had recommended. She was lying on a therapy table while the specialist manipulated her legs, testing for responses. Anything? Evelyn asked, her voice strained. Some reflex activity in your left quadriceps. That's good. That's progress. Evelyn's face tightened with frustration. It's been almost 2 weeks. I should be able to move by now. Recovery from this kind of suppression takes time. Your neural pathways need to rebuild connections that haven't fired in 21 years. I don't have time. The board meeting is in 4 days. If I can't stand up and walk into that room, they'll assume Vale was right about me being mentally unstable. The rehabilitation specialist met Daniel's eyes over Evelyn's head. his expression sympathetic but realistic. They both knew 4 days wasn't enough. Daniel waited until the session ended before telling Evelyn about Patricia Reeves. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched the testimony. "She tried to save me," Evelyn whispered. "She knew something was wrong, and she tried to stop it. And Vale destroyed her for it, just like he's destroyed everyone else who got in his way. But now we have proof. We have her testimony, the financial records, the journal. That's enough, right? That's enough to stop him?" Daniel wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her that everything would work out, but he'd learned too much about how the system actually worked, how money and power could corrupt justice, how the truth didn't always win. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we're going to try." The next 3 days were a blur of legal maneuvering and media management. Rachel presented the evidence to the DA, arguing that the case against Vale was substantial enough to warrant dropping the charges against Daniel. The DA was interested but non-committal. He wanted more time to investigate, time they didn't have. The Mercer Biomedical Board meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Evelyn needed to be there, needed to defend herself against Vale's claims of mental incompetence. But she still couldn't walk, could barely stand with assistance. Thursday night, Daniel found her in the physical therapy room, working alone, trying desperately to make her legs respond. Sweat poured down her face. Her hands gripped the parallel bars so hard her knuckles were white. "Come on," she whispered to her body. "Come on, please." Her left leg trembled, shifted slightly, but she couldn't lift it, couldn't make it bear weight. She collapsed back into the wheelchair, sobbing with frustration. Daniel knelt beside her. "Evelyn, you don't have to walk to prove anything. You're not weak for still being in this chair. The board will never take me seriously like this. They'll see me in the wheelchair and assume Vale was right, that I'm broken, incompetent. Then we show them the evidence, the testimony, the financial records, the journal. We prove Vale's crimes so thoroughly that your physical condition becomes irrelevant. You don't understand what it's like, being dismissed because people assume disability equals incompetence." Her voice broke. "I've spent my entire life fighting that assumption, building a career, running a company, proving I was just as capable as anyone else. And tomorrow I have to walk into that boardroom and fight that battle all over again. You won't be alone. I'll be there. Rachel will be there. We'll present the evidence together. What if it's not enough? What if they choose to believe Vale anyway? Then we go to the FBI, the SEC, every regulatory agency we can find. We don't stop until someone listens." Evelyn looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely afraid. Not angry or determined or fierce, just scared. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I've been in control my entire life, running companies, managing people, making decisions, but right now I don't know what to do." "You do what you've been doing since the moment you suspected the truth. You fight. You refuse to give up. You trust that the truth matters." "What if it doesn't? What if we live in a world where people like Vale win?" Daniel thought about his wife, about watching her die despite doing everything right, about Lily's illness and the insurance company's denials and all the ways the system failed people who needed it most. "Then we fight anyway," he said, "because giving up means they win for sure. Fighting means we've got a chance." Evelyn wiped her eyes, nodded. "Okay, tomorrow we fight." Friday morning arrived too fast. Daniel picked up Evelyn at 8, helping her into his car. She dressed carefully, a sharp black suit that projected authority even from a wheelchair. Her hair was pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked professional and intimidating and absolutely terrified. They drove to Mercer Biomedical's headquarters in silence. The building was downtown, all glass and steel, with the company logo prominent above the entrance. Daniel had never been inside before, had never imagined he'd be walking into a boardroom to accuse one of the country's most respected physicians of 2 decades of medical fraud. Rachel met them in the lobby. "The board is assembled. Vale and his legal team are already inside. They're confident. That's either a very good sign or a very bad one." "Which do you think?" Evelyn asked. "I think we're about to find out." They took the elevator to the top floor. The boardroom was exactly what Daniel expected. Massive table, expensive chairs, windows overlooking the city. 12 board members sat around the table, looking uncomfortable. At the far end, Adrian Vale sat with 3 lawyers, looking calm and professional. He met Evelyn's eyes as she entered and smiled slightly. Not threatening, almost sad. Evelyn wheeled herself to her position at the head of the table. Daniel and Rachel stood behind her. The room felt like a courtroom. The board chairman, an older man named Robert Chen, cleared his throat. Ms. Mercer, Dr. Vale, thank you both for coming. We're here to address some serious allegations that have been made public over the past 2 weeks. This is not a legal proceeding, but we need to understand what happened before we can determine the appropriate course of action. Of course, Evelyn said, her voice steady. Dr. Vale has provided us with documentation suggesting you've been experiencing mental health difficulties, that you discontinued essential medical treatment against his advice and have since made unfounded accusations to deflect from your deteriorating condition. That's a lie, Evelyn said flatly, and I have evidence to prove it. For the next hour, Rachel presented everything they'd found, the journal entries in Vale's own handwriting, Patricia Reeves's testimony about the initial misdiagnosis, the financial record showing Vale's shell company, the engineering analysis of the spinal brace proving it was designed to harm rather than help. The board members listened with growing horror. Some took notes. Others just stared. When Rachel finished, Robert Chen turned to Vale. Dr. Vale, how do you respond to these allegations? Vale stood slowly. He didn't look angry or defensive. He looked almost relieved. Everything Miss Mercer has presented is true, he said quietly. The room went completely silent. Adrian, one of his lawyers started. No. Vale held up a hand. I'm done lying. I'm done pretending. He looked at Evelyn. You were right about all of it. I maintained your paralysis deliberately. I profited from your condition. I destroyed anyone who questioned my methods. And I did it for 21 years. Evelyn stared at him, speechless. Why? She finally asked. Vale sat down heavily. Because I convinced myself it was for a greater good. That keeping you dependent allowed me to advance research that would help millions of people. That the ends justified the means. He laughed bitterly. And because somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a person. You became a tool, a means to an end. You tortured me. Yes. For 21 years. Yes. And you expect me to what? Forgive you because you're finally admitting it? No. Vale met her eyes. I expect you to destroy me. It's what I deserve. The confession hung in the air. Robert Chen looked like he might be sick. Dr. Vale, do you understand what you're admitting to? Corporate fraud, medical malpractice, conspiracy, probably a dozen other crimes. Yes, I understand. Vale turned to the board. I'm resigning my position at Mercer Biomedical, effective immediately. I'm also voluntarily surrendering my medical license and cooperating fully with any criminal investigation. Evelyn deserves justice, and everyone I've harmed deserves the truth. He stood and walked toward the door, paused beside Evelyn's wheelchair. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I am sorry. I know that doesn't matter. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am sorry. He left. His lawyers scrambled after him, already on their phones. The boardroom remained silent for a long moment. Then Robert Chen said, Miss Mercer, on behalf of this board, I want to apologize. We failed you. We should have questioned Dr. Vale's treatment protocols years ago. We should have protected you. Yes, Evelyn said, you should have. What do you need from us now? I need full access to every file Dr. Vale created, every research project he initiated, every financial transaction he authorized. I need a complete audit of Project Chrysalis and any other programs he was running. And I need this board to commit to oversight reforms that prevent anything like this from ever happening again. Done. All of it. Good. Evelyn's hands tightened on her wheelchair armrests. Because we're going to fix this company. We're going to develop the treatments Vale was hoarding and make them available to patients who actually need them. We're going to rebuild Mercer Biomedical into something ethical, something worth my family's name. We're with you, Robert said. Whatever you need. The meeting adjourned. Board members approached Evelyn one by one, apologizing, offering support. Daniel stood back, watching her handle them with grace and steel. When they finally left, Evelyn slumped in her wheelchair, exhausted. You did it, Daniel said quietly. We did it. I couldn't have done any of this without you. What happens now? Now the FBI investigates. The medical board revokes Vale's license. The company rebuilds. She turned to look at him. And you need to take care of your daughter. The DA dropped the charges against you this morning. Rachel got the confirmation while we were in the meeting. Daniel felt a weight lift off his chest. Really? Really? You're free. He should have felt relieved, triumphant, but all he felt was tired. What about you? He asked. Evelyn looked down at her legs, at the wheelchair that was still her prison despite everything they'd accomplished. I start physical therapy tomorrow. Real therapy this time, not Vale's poison. Dr. Kim thinks it'll take months to see significant improvement, maybe years. But you're free too. Even if your legs never work right, you're not being controlled anymore. Yeah. She smiled, fragile but real. I'm free. They left the building together, Daniel pushing Evelyn's wheelchair toward his car. The sun was setting over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Behind them, Adrian Vale's empire was collapsing. Criminal charges were being filed. Lawsuits were being prepared. The truth was finally devastatingly public. But ahead of them, there was still work to do. Healing to pursue. A future to build from the ruins of the past. And for the first time in 21 years, Evelyn Mercer had the freedom to choose what that future looked like. The FBI investigation took 4 months. Federal agents tore through Vale's financial records, his research files, his personal communications. What they found was even worse than Daniel and Evelyn had documented. Vale had been running similar schemes at 2 other hospitals, keeping 3 additional patients in medically unnecessary states of dependence while funneling research money into private accounts. One of those patients had died 2 years ago from complications that never should have happened. Adrian Vale was arrested in March on 47 counts of fraud, medical malpractice, conspiracy, and involuntary manslaughter. His bail was set at $5 million. He couldn't make it. Daniel watched the perp walk on television from Evelyn's mansion, where he'd been spending most of his time since the board meeting. She'd hired him officially as head of biomechanical engineering for Mercer Biomedical, a position that didn't exist before but that she'd created specifically for him. The salary was more money than he'd ever imagined making. Enough to cover Lily's treatment, enough to move out of the cramped apartment into something better. But he hadn't moved yet, hadn't quite believed any of this was real. On the screen, Vale shuffled past cameras in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, looking 20 years older than he had at the board meeting. His confession had shocked everyone, but it hadn't earned him any leniency. The prosecution was pushing for life in prison. Good, Evelyn said from her wheelchair beside Daniel. She was eating lunch. Actual food now, not the carefully controlled diet Vale had prescribed. She'd gained 15 pounds and looked healthier for it. He deserves worse than prison. He deserves to know what it feels like to be trapped. He'll know, Daniel said. Maximum security for the rest of his life is its own kind of wheelchair. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I visited him last week at the jail. Daniel turned to stare at her. Why? I needed to ask him something that's been bothering me since the board meeting. She set down her fork, her hands trembling slightly. He said he stopped seeing me as a person, that I became a tool to him, but I needed to know when. When exactly did he look at me and decide my life was worth less than his ambitions? What did he say? He said there wasn't a single moment, that it happened gradually, over months and years. Every time he made a small compromise with his ethics, it became easier to make the next one. Every time he rationalized hurting me for the greater good got smaller and his profit got larger. Her voice hardened. And by the end, he admitted he wasn't even thinking about patients anymore. Just patents and profit margins and his own legacy. That's how evil actually works, Daniel said quietly. Not dramatic villain speeches, just small compromises that add up until you've destroyed someone's life and convinced yourself it was justified. He asked me to forgive him. Did you? No, and I told him I never would. Evelyn met Daniel's eyes, but I also told him that I hoped he'd spend his prison sentence actually thinking about what he did, actually confronting the harm he caused, because he's going to live for another 20 or 30 years, and he has 2 choices. He can spend that time making excuses, or he can spend it genuinely trying to understand why he became a monster. You think he'll choose the second option? I don't know, but I hope so, because the world has enough people who hurt others and never question why. The trial began in June. Daniel testified for 3 hours, presenting the engineering analysis of the spinal brace, explaining how the compression mechanisms were designed to prevent healing rather than support it. Dr. Patricia Reeves testified about the initial misdiagnosis and Vale's systematic destruction of her career. Dr. Sarah Kim explained the medical evidence showing Evelyn's spine had never been as damaged as Vale claimed, but the most powerful testimony came from Evelyn herself. She wheeled to the witness stand, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Then she looked directly at Vale, who sat at the defense table looking smaller and grayer than Daniel remembered, and told her story. "For 21 years I believed I was broken," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "I looked at my body and felt disgust. I looked at other people and felt inferior. I built an entire life around the belief that I was damaged, that I needed constant medical intervention just to survive." She paused, composing herself. "And all of that was a lie Dr. Vale created. He took a traumatic injury and turned it into a prison. He convinced me to be grateful for chains. And when I think about all the moments I hated myself for being weak, for needing help, for not being normal, every single one of those moments was manufactured by someone I trusted." The jury looked horrified. Several members were crying. "But here's what I want people to understand," Evelyn continued. "This isn't just about me. Dr. Vale's actions represent a larger sickness in our healthcare system. A system that values profit over patients, that allows vulnerable people to be exploited because they trust their doctors, that enables abuse because we assume physicians always act in their patients' best interests." She leaned forward slightly. "My case got attention because I'm wealthy and white and I run a company. But how many other patients are being harmed right now? How many people are trapped in treatments they don't need because it's profitable? How many are told their conditions are hopeless when they're not? We need to acknowledge that this isn't an isolated incident. This is systemic." The prosecution rested 2 days later. The defense tried to argue that Vale's intentions had been good, that his methods were experimental but well-meaning. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Vale's sentencing was scheduled for August. The prosecution was asking for 45 years to life. At 62, that was effectively a death sentence. Daniel thought he'd feel triumphant when the verdict came down. Instead, he just felt tired and sad, and aware that no amount of prison time would give Evelyn back the 21 years Vale had stolen. But the work wasn't finished. Mercer Biomedical's board had appointed Evelyn as permanent CEO with unanimous approval. Her first major decision was to restructure the company's research division, focusing on affordable treatments rather than maximum profit. Her second was to release the Project Chrysalis research into the public domain. "You're giving away billions of dollars," Robert Chen said when she announced the decision. "That research could have made the company the dominant player in neurological therapeutics." "That research was developed using resources stolen from patients," Evelyn replied. "It doesn't belong to Mercer Biomedical. It belongs to everyone who needs it." The decision made headlines. Some analysts called it financial suicide. Others called it revolutionary. Evelyn didn't care either way. She sat in her office reviewing the published research data and felt something close to peace. "Miss Mercer?" Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Your 3 o'clock physical therapy session is ready." Evelyn nodded and wheeled toward the therapy room that had been converted from Vale's old office. She'd had everything of his removed: the desk, the medical equipment, the degrees on the wall. Now it was just a space with parallel bars, floor mats, and specialized equipment designed to help rebuild muscle strength. Daniel was already there, having shifted most of his engineering work to afternoons so he could assist with Evelyn's therapy. The rehabilitation specialist had taught him the protocols, and Evelyn trusted him more than she trusted any stranger. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." The therapy was brutal. 6 months after removing Vale's brace, Evelyn had regained some sensation in her legs, but minimal motor control. She could feel Daniel's hand supporting her as she stood between the parallel bars, but her legs trembled and refused to hold her weight for more than a few seconds. "It's not working," she said, frustration bleeding through her voice. "I thought removing the poison would fix this. I thought I'd get better." "You're getting better. You're standing for 5 seconds now, instead of 2. That's progress." 5 seconds. In 6 months. Your body was suppressed for 21 years, Evelyn. Recovery doesn't happen on your preferred timeline. She wanted to argue, but her legs gave out and Daniel had to catch her, easing her back into the wheelchair. She slumped there, exhausted and defeated. "What if this is it?" she asked quietly. "What if I never walk again? What if I went through all of this? Exposed Vale, destroyed his career, rebuilt the company, and I'm still trapped in this chair?" Daniel knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. "Then you're still free. You keep thinking the wheelchair is the prison, but it's not. The prison was believing you had no choice. The prison was thinking you deserved to be trapped. You're not that person anymore." "But I know what you wanted, but you don't always get what you want just because you fought hard enough. Sometimes you fight, and you still lose parts of yourself. Sometimes the damage doesn't fully heal. His voice gentled. My wife fought cancer for 3 years. She did everything right. Chemo, radiation, experimental treatments. She fought harder than anyone I've ever known, and she still died. That doesn't mean the fight wasn't worth it. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. About your wife. I'm sorry too, and I'm sorry that removing Vale's poison didn't magically fix everything. But Evelyn, you survived something that should have destroyed you. You exposed corruption that's going to change how medical ethics are enforced nationwide. You're rebuilding a company into something that actually helps people. That matters. Whether you walk again or not, that matters. She wiped her eyes. I still want to walk. Then we'll keep trying, every day, for as long as it takes. They continued the therapy sessions. Progress was slow and painful and sometimes non-existent. But 3 weeks later, Evelyn stood between the parallel bars for 30 seconds. Then a minute. Then 5 minutes. By October, she could take 3 steps with assistance. The day she managed 10 steps, Daniel brought Lily to watch. His daughter was doing better now. The experimental treatment Evelyn had funded was working, pushing her autoimmune condition into something manageable rather than terminal. She'd gained weight, her color had improved, and she smiled more. That's amazing, Ms. Mercer, Lily said, clapping as Evelyn completed her 10th step. You're walking. Sort of, Evelyn said, breathing hard, sweat pouring down her face. More like controlled falling with someone catching me. That's what walking is when you're learning. I remember from when I was little. Evelyn laughed despite her exhaustion. She'd grown fond of this bright, optimistic 10-year-old who visited the mansion regularly. Lily reminded her of what she'd missed, the possibility of normalcy, of family, of connections that weren't built on business or obligation. You want to try the parallel bars? Evelyn asked. Lily's eyes lit up. Really? Why not? Daniel, help her up. They spent the next hour playing, Lily pretending she was relearning to walk just like Evelyn, both of them laughing when they stumbled. Daniel watched them with an expression that Evelyn couldn't quite name. Something warm and sad and hopeful all at once. Later, after Lily had gone home with Mrs. Chen for the evening, Daniel and Evelyn sat in her office sharing takeout Chinese food. It had become a routine, working late, eating dinner together, talking about everything except the trauma they'd both survived. She's good for you, Daniel said. Lily, she makes you smile. She's easy to smile around. No ulterior motives, no corporate politics, just a kid who thinks parallel bars are fun. She asked me the other day if you were going to be her new mom. Evelyn nearly choked on her low mane. What did you tell her? I told her that's not how things work. That you're my boss and my friend, but not... He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Not what? Not anything more than that. The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn set down her food, studying Daniel's face. Over the past 8 months, he'd become essential to her life in ways that had nothing to do with physical therapy or engineering analysis. He was the first person she talked to most mornings and the last person she saw most nights. He knew her schedule better than Marcus did. He'd seen her at her absolute worst, crying in frustration, screaming at her unresponsive legs, breaking down under the weight of everything she'd lost. And he'd never once treated her like she was broken. What if it was more? She asked quietly. Would that be completely insane? Daniel was very still. You're my boss, Evelyn. There's a massive power imbalance. I could fire you right now, make you just a consultant. Would that fix the power imbalance? You're also one of the wealthiest people in California, and I'm a former aerospace engineer who drove a delivery van 6 months ago. So we have different bank accounts. That doesn't mean... It means I don't want you to think I'm using you. That I'm here because of your money or your company or anything except... He stopped again. Except what? Except that you're the most stubborn, frustrating, brilliant person I've ever met. And somewhere between breaking into Vale's house and watching you learn to walk, I stopped seeing you as a case I was helping with and started seeing you as someone I... He took a breath. Someone I care about. More than I probably should. Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. Fear, maybe, or possibility. I care about you too. And Lily, you're both... You've become important to me. Evelyn, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know, what if I'm asking? What if I'm saying that I want to try this, whatever this is? Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, fragile and uncertain. Then I guess we try. They didn't kiss that night, didn't rush into anything, but they held hands while they finished their Chinese food, and when Daniel left, Evelyn felt lighter than she had in months. The relationship developed slowly, carefully, with both of them aware of how easily it could become complicated. Daniel moved out of the company officially, taking a consulting position that paid less but eliminated the direct boss-employee dynamic. Evelyn introduced him and Lily to her social circle, watching wealthy executives struggle to make conversation with a 10-year-old who wanted to talk about Pokemon. It was awkward and weird and sometimes uncomfortable. But it was also real in a way nothing else in Evelyn's life had been for 21 years. By Christmas, Evelyn could walk 50 feet with aluminum crutches. Not graceful, not without pain, but she could do it. She walked into the Mercer Biomedical holiday party on Daniel's arm, Lily holding her other hand, and the entire company gave her a standing ovation. Evelyn cried, which she tried to tell herself was embarrassing, but which actually felt cathartic. Later, Marcus found her in a quiet corner, watching employees dance and laugh and celebrate. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "For what? Learning to walk? I'm still using crutches. For surviving, for fighting, for rebuilding everything Vale destroyed." He paused. "And for being brave enough to let people in again. I know that's not easy for you." Evelyn looked across the room at Daniel, who was attempting to teach Lily some ridiculous dance move that neither of them could actually execute. "It's terrifying, actually, but I think I'm tired of being alone." "Good. You deserve happiness." "I don't know about deserve, but I'll take it anyway." The new year brought more changes. The FDA fast-tracked several treatments developed from the Project Chrysalis research. The first patients began receiving therapies that might actually restore neurological function instead of just managing symptoms. Evelyn watched the clinical trial results with something close to vindication. This was what medical research was supposed to be, helping people, not exploiting them. Adrian Vale's sentencing happened in January. The judge gave him 35 years, less than the prosecution wanted, more than the defense had hoped for. Vale stood to receive the sentence without emotion, then turned to look at Evelyn in the gallery. "I hope you walk again," he said quietly. "I genuinely do." Evelyn didn't respond. She'd said everything she needed to say to him already. But later in the car with Daniel, she said, "I think he meant it, the hope that I'd recover. I think that was actually sincere." "Does that change anything?" "No. He still destroyed my life for 21 years. But I think he's starting to understand what he did, starting to actually see the damage instead of justifying it." "Is that enough?" "It's something. More than nothing." She looked out the window at the city passing by. "I've been thinking about forgiveness a lot lately. Whether I'm supposed to forgive him at some point. Whether that's what makes me the better person." "Forgiveness isn't required," Daniel said. "You're allowed to be angry forever if you want. But I don't want to be angry forever. I don't want Vale to take up any more of my life than he already has." She turned back to Daniel. "So I'm not forgiving him, but I'm letting him go. I'm choosing to focus on what I'm building instead of what he destroyed." "I think that's wise." "I think it's survival." By spring, Evelyn was walking without crutches for short distances. The physical therapists were cautiously optimistic. Dr. Kim said recovery might plateau at 80% function, maybe 90% if Evelyn was lucky. She'd never run marathons or climb mountains, but she could walk through her office, stand during presentations, move through the world without the wheelchair. It was enough. More than enough. Mercer Biomedical launched a new initiative in April, a patient advocacy program designed to prevent the kind of abuse Vale had perpetrated. The company would fund independent medical reviews for patients who felt their treatment wasn't working. They'd provide resources for people to question their physicians without fear. They'd create transparency in medical research and drug pricing. The program was named after Patricia Reeves, who cried when Evelyn called to tell her. "You're giving me back my legacy," Patricia said. "You're letting me help people again." "You never stopped helping people," Evelyn replied. "You tried to save me 21 years ago. That meant something. Even though I didn't know it at the time, it meant something." On a warm Saturday in May, exactly 1 year after Daniel had first stumbled into Evelyn's office and damaged that medical delivery, they stood together on a ranch 2 hours north of San Francisco. Evelyn had bought the property 3 months ago, 40 acres of rolling hills and oak trees, far from the city and the mansion that had been her prison. The main house was modest by her standards. Just 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, space for living rather than impressing. Lily was running through the fields with a puppy they'd adopted last week, her laughter carrying on the wind. "You're really going to live here?" Daniel asked, his arm around Evelyn's waist, supporting her as they walked slowly across the uneven ground. I'm really going to try. Keep a small apartment in the city for business, but make this home base. She gestured at the land around them. I spent 21 years trapped in one building. I want space now, room to breathe. It's beautiful. It's impractical. The commute's going to be terrible, and I'll probably get bored within a month. But it's mine, chosen freely. Not inherited, not obligated, just mine. They stood there in the sunlight watching Lily play, and Evelyn thought about all the things she'd lost. 21 years. The ability to run. The easy trust she'd once had in other people. Parts of herself she'd never get back. But she'd also gained things. Understanding of her own strength. Genuine relationships not built on power or obligation. A purpose beyond profit, actually helping people instead of just running a company. And most importantly, she'd learned that survival wasn't about being unbroken. It was about refusing to let the broken parts define you. Dad! Ms. Mercer! Lily ran toward them, the puppy bounding alongside her. Can we go to the creek, please? I don't think I can make it that far today, Evelyn said. My legs are tired. Oh, Lily's face fell, then brightened. I could bring you pictures. I'll take photos with Dad's phone and show you everything. That sounds perfect. Lily ran off again, Daniel following at a more sedate pace. Evelyn stayed behind, settling onto a bench near the house, watching them disappear into the trees. This wasn't the life she'd imagined at 26, fresh out of Stanford Medical School, ready to change the world. That woman had believed in clear victories and unambiguous justice. She'd thought success meant being powerful enough that nothing could hurt you. Evelyn knew better now. Success wasn't about being invulnerable. It was about surviving the things that broke you and choosing to keep building anyway. It was about acknowledging damage without letting it define you. It was about finding people who saw your scars and loved you, not despite them, but including them. The puppy came bounding back, followed by a laughing Lily. Then Daniel, walking carefully, taking his time. They joined her on the bench, warm and solid and real. Lily chattered about the creek and the fish she'd seen, and could they please come back tomorrow? Daniel's hand found Evelyn's, their fingers interlacing naturally. And Evelyn thought about Adrian Vale in prison, starting the long process of confronting what he'd done. About Patricia Reeves practicing medicine again through the advocacy program. About all the patients who'd received treatments developed from research that could have stayed locked away for profit, but was instead released freely to help anyone who needed it. The world was still broken in so many ways. Healthcare was still exploitative. Wealth still bought justice more reliably than innocence did. Powerful people still hurt vulnerable ones, and too often got away with it. But sometimes, not always, not even usually, but sometimes, the truth mattered. Sometimes the people who fought back actually won. Sometimes the system worked the way it was supposed to. And sometimes a broken billionaire and an exhausted engineer and a sick little girl could become something like a family, built not on perfection, but on choosing each other despite all the damage. Evelyn would never get back the 21 years Vale stole. Her body would never be what it was before the accident. The trauma would always be there, a scar that ached in cold weather. But she was free. Finally, completely free. And that, she was learning, was enough. The sun climbed higher over the California hills. Somewhere in the distance, water ran over stones in the creek. The puppy chased butterflies through the tall grass. Lily asked 1,000 questions about everything she saw, and Evelyn Mercer, who'd spent 2 decades as a prisoner in her own body, sat with people who loved her and let herself simply be. Not fixed, not perfect. Not the person she'd been before Vale destroyed her life, just herself. Scarred and strong and finally home.